This conference will now be recorded.
We're going to call this workshop, budget workshop in order. Let's stand for our prayer and remain standing for our pledge, please. In order, if we come to you today, we just thank you for allowing us together. We're allowing us to live in a free country, Lord, and we just pray that our country will continue to prosper and strive. We pray for our first responders. We pray for the ones who are sick and dealing with all the terrible the virus and the healthcare providers as well as the workers, Lord. Lord, we just pray that you'll use us and guide us as we make decisions that are for the betterment of Madison County and for our country. We ask all this in thy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Before we get started, I don't know what y'all, we've got a deputy that's in the hospital in Valdosta, SRO, Joey Knight.
Oh, really?
COVID, and it's pneumonia, and, bad, not good shape.
I'd like to keep Joey and his family, and I understand some more LEO officers have gotten COVID that were in close contact with him now. But, all five commissioners are present, as well as our county manager, our county clerk, and our finance officer. Mr. Dillon, we'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, in front of you, you guys are going to have a copy of the tentative budget, schedule for today and tomorrow, a copy of my presentation, and a budget recap, just so you know that's what the material I placed here in front of you. I don't know if Sherilyn's put anything else or anything. So, all right, so what I'm going to do today, though, what I wanted to do was kind of give an overview of how the budget works a little bit, not necessarily exactly how it works, but kind of on a high level how the budget works and how fund accounting works. And I know that all of y'all have had this before probably, but it may be a little redundant information, but I'm just gonna, that's what the purpose of this is today. So fund accounting differs from just general accounting in the fact that, you know, they serve two different purposes. The accounting system is just keeping a record for your resources, and in our case, we're keeping a record of money, right? So you could account for whatever your resources are, if they're cows or hay bales or whatever it is, you could account for any of that stuff. We're accounting for money. Fund accounting is an accounting system for recording resources that have limited uses, right? So somebody else restricts our money, or you guys restrict the money, or a donor, the state, somebody like that restricts the money that comes in. So there's several different ways that happens, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. They can be by grant restrictions, so we get grants in. The grant says you can only spend this money in this way. By law, where the state says, here's money, but this is the way it's going to be spent when you look at the statute. Another way is by the governing agency, right? So that's where you guys say, here's an ordinance. We're going to collect this tax, and that tax is going to be spent a certain way. So an example of that is the TDC money, right? You guys enacted a tax. It can only be used in accordance with your plan, which we're going to talk about later this morning. What this does is it places an emphasis on accountability rather than profitability, right? So when you look at your private company, you think about money coming in and money going out, and money left over is your profit. Here, that's not really the case. We're not concerned about making a profit here in the government world. We're just concerned about being able to account for the money that we're spending. So here's how a general private business works. You're going to look at your money coming in, your money going out. You have one general ledger, and as long as the money going out is less than the money coming in, you're doing great, right? You're making a profit. And that's going to be the main concern in the private world. Now, in the government world, you have multiple funds that all essentially act as their own general ledger, right? So you're going to have funds that or Fund 10, which is our general fund, our building, or not building, but our transportation, you know, all these different funds that we're going to go over. I'm going to give you a list of all the funds here in just a minute, so that way you can see all the different smaller general ledgers that we, over there in the finance office, have to keep track of on a daily basis. So why do we use it? Because like I said, it's been limited. You want to make sure that you can accurately keep track of that limited money, right? So if you think about it like this, that at the end of the year, the auditors come in and they want to look at it, you know what I mean? They want to make sure it makes it way easier for them to go, okay, this pot of money was here, this pot of money came in, money went out. You know what I mean? Also makes it easier for me to be able to tell you guys, hey, here's the pot of money went in, money went out, that's the same money. We're not putting all our money in one pool and me going, well, we had so much come in here, you know, and it just keeps it clean. The other interesting thing with fund accounting is that it's going to reveal your areas of strengths and weaknesses. So, in other words, you can look at a specific pot of money and look at the money coming in and the money going out, and then determine, am I making enough money? You know what I mean? So if we just had all the county's money all coming in, and let's say we had a really good year in fuel tax, right? But it may cloud the year that we had somewhere else where we had a deficiency at. You know, because if it all came into one pot, it looked like we had plenty, but really all that money's restricted. So it's going to reveal where we have good policy and where we have poor policy. The other thing too is provides transparency. You know, like I said, it makes it clear that you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. If all of it was in one pot, then I could just, you know, write checks wherever, and you wouldn't be. It'd be harder to follow this, especially in Florida. It's a big deal, the transparency aspect. Here's a list of the major funds. So we have, I don't even know, 27 funds, maybe?
That sounds about right.
Somewhere in that range, I'm going to guess. They're in your packet. If you want to follow along, you can see them. These are the list of the major funds. Of course, you have your general fund, which is where most of our ad valorem, it's where our ad valorem tax goes, but it's like most of our other things come in through general fund. Emergency management's a big one, and bear in mind on emergency management, that's a fund that we pay $25,000 toward every year, and the rest of that money all comes from the state and federal government, right? So as long as we pay our $25,000, Lee's going to get in the money she gets in, and if, you know, it's enough money to hire 1 million people, then so be it. We're paying $25,000, right? So there's not, when you think about in terms of can we save money somewhere, that's generally not the place to look, right? Because it's $25,000. Fund 20 is a transportation trust fund. We're going to talk about that in a little more detail. Fund 30 is the money that goes out to the sheriff. That's the transfer for the fine and forfeiture. Of course, you have solid waste, source development, EMS, the fire special assessment, and the fiscally constrained. And those are the major funds. Now, there's other ones that y'all might look at and go, well, Billy, that's a major fund too. These are the ones where I would say most of our action happens. You know what I'm saying? Most of the action happens here in these funds. That's why I listed them. Your other funds now are various funds. And the reason I call these other funds is because most of these funds are not money that you guys allocate out. They come from somewhere else, and that somewhere else restricts how they're going to be spent. Right? Does it make sense? So I'm trying to think of one, for instance. The Fund 82, the Indigent Care Hospital Tax. That's that half-cent sales tax that we pay, that we go to the hospitals. They use to pay their, we say they use it to pay their loan. They use it for that, and then they pay with other stuff. But that money comes in, it's restricted. It has to go to that.
Like a pass-through.
Yeah, we're just like a pass-through, but we have to be able to account for it, right? That's part of the fund accounting. So if you look at those, I mean, if you have questions about them, I can't tell you I can answer every question right here, right now, but I can find an answer to any question you have about them if you're just curious about where the money comes from or how we actually spend it. But those are the other funds. That's why I said these are the non-major funds. All right, so what we're going to do is look at Fund 10. And the first question we have to look at is, like, okay, so where does this money in Fund 10 come from? Anybody know? It's like when you get to looking at it, it comes from all over the place, right? So it comes from 3 main areas. Number 1 is ad valorem taxes, and we're going to look at ad valorem taxes. There are other taxes. You can see this, and if you want to follow through on the schedule, that's one thing, but if you wanted to get out your actual budget, and you look at the very first page, that's the Fund 10 revenue. All right, so there's ad valorem taxes, other taxes, and then licenses, fees, and permits. Actually, it's the first 2 pages. Are going to be all the revenue sources in Fund 10. So ad valorem taxes, of course, I'm sure y'all understand this. It means according to the value, right? And here's how they figure ad valorem taxes. First thing they do is they look at the value of a piece of property, right? That's what upstairs above us, the property appraiser does. So she values a piece of property, she subtracts out any exemptions they may have for homestead, ag, there's exemptions for, blind people, veterans, all kinds of things, right? So then what you get is the taxable value of that property. So then you take that taxable value, you multiply it by our millage rate, and there's your ad valorem taxes, right? So, you know, Lee every year produces the taxable value back in, is that June, September, June 1st. Produces the taxable value. If you take that taxable value she produces, multiply it by the millage rate, it's going to give you what our ad valorem taxes are going to be for that year. These are the other taxes. So there's, if you look through there, there's a communication service tax, there's county revenue sharing that comes in, there's sales tax, there's licensing taxes that people pay. The vast majority of these things are given to us by the state, right? These are provided by the Office of Economic and Demographic Research. So that's why I couldn't get your budget out to you, because we were still waiting on those funds, because what they have to do is, there's a committee called the Revenue Estimating Committee. Have y'all heard about the revenue estimating? So they get together, they are a member of the Office of Economic and Demographic Research, a person from the House, a person from the Senate, a person from the governor's office. They get together and they just, I mean, if you ever watch it, it is incredibly boring. They sit there and they look at spreadsheets and they talk about numbers, and then they all come to a consensus of what they think the number should be, right? And that's, so the reason I say that is, bear in mind, those people they all have their own agendas for why those numbers should be what they should be, and there's no guarantee that's what that number is. So when you look in here and you see that we put a number like, let me find one, revenue sharing proceeds, which is about, I don't know, 15 down, and we put 333, 376. That's a number that was provided to us. And again, that's based on those guys getting together, guys and women, I should say, getting together and coming up with a consensus number, right? It's not guaranteed. COVID was to come back in full force, you see all these numbers drop. I mean, because they're going to come back and give us another number.
Yeah, I think there's some state economists on that committee.
Well, they're all economists, but there's the four main people on the committee. So the way it works, the four of them sit at this big table, and people come present to them, and they're all economists. And it's like I said, it's incredible. It's interesting to me, but it's incredibly boring. And I mean, they make their case for why they think their revenue for whatever their office is. So the clerks, we do it because we work off revenue in the court side.
Right.
And we make our case for why we think the revenue is based on the number of cases there are and the kinds of cases and all that. And then they sit there and they go, well, based on your history, it's just this and this. And they, you know, and then they kind of say, this is what we think the clerks are going to bring in. And, you know, for the past few years, other than this year, we beat that revenue estimate every time. But it's been close to what we presented, but they knock it down and we beat it. But it just means they sweep all that money. So, you know, there's a reason why they do the things they do, to keep that in mind. Anyway, so you got all of these things, and what I want to emphasize is that, again, these are projected revenues, not guaranteed revenues. So when you see that in the book, those are projections, not guarantees. So just want to warn you, just be careful that I just want y'all not to say I didn't say that, or not have you say I didn't say that. These are the licensing fees and permits. These are where a lot of those things come from. A lot of them come from building-related permits. You have like zoning permits. You have building permits, density permits. There's all kinds of things like that. I can't remember all the different things we do for building. Anyway, those come in there. The tax collector collects fees because, remember, she's a budget office. So she collects fees. They all come in here, and then you fund her office, right? Property appraiser collects some fees, and then there's tons of other fees. One of the big ones here to mention is that we do make money off of interest from investments. So basically, when all this money comes in, we throw it somewhere, and it makes money on the interest, right? And generally, where we put that money is in what used to be called the SBA, Florida Prime now is the name of it. We put the vast majority of it there. Some of the money we put into the Florida Local Government Investment Trust, which you guys probably are aware of because the FAC is a partner in that along with the clerks. So that's why we put some of it there. And actually, I sit on the board for the trust, just so y'all are aware. If y'all ever have a question about the trust, I'm on the board for it. We don't put all of our money there, but it's in the reason why is because SBA makes a little bit better percentage. You know, but I put enough there to keep, you know, us a member in good standing. And then, of course, we have transfers from our reserves. We transfer money in. We transfer money in from other funds, namely fiscally constrained. That's the big one that we transfer money into the general fund from. Where do we spend all this money? Right? The vast majority goes to the constitutional officers, right? The sheriff, me, crossway here, on over. The other part of the money are the board's employees, and what I mean by board employees are Sherilyn, building department, debt services, those things. Not all of these guys are y'all's employees, but not the road department, not EMS, not the people who are funded out of those funds. We have professional contract services. Those are things where we hire anybody that we hire, you know, land surveyor, an attorney, outside attorney, whatever we may hire, that's good there. Repairs, maintenance, and insurance, which is a big deal because, you know, you guys own a lot of old buildings. You know, so it's a big deal. It costs money to keep these things up. And then you have these other organizations like senior citizens, the library, the hospital, people that come and ask for money that you guys are gracious enough to give money to. Those are the big places where we spend money out of Fund 10. All right, so I'm going to do this quickly with Fund 20. Fund 20, that's your transportation fund. It comes from fuel tax. They have permit fees. One of the other things I want to mention, because I hadn't really thought about this, but it may be pertinent to your road question that you've been asking about grading. If you look at Fund 20, and this may be a question for Lonnie, because like I said, I didn't really think about it until I was putting this presentation together. Fund 20, I don't know what page that's on. Sorry about this, guys.
Page 60.
Yep, page 16. Fund 20, one of the places that they make money from, about 5 up from the bottom, it says grading services for the town of Lee. Right, so by contract, apparently, the road department contracts with the city of Lee to grade some of their roads. This may be something, an option for some of those things. I know he has issues now with manpower and that kind of stuff, but I mean, it may be another option rather than the NTSU, those things that we're looking at. Like I said, that's a question for Lonnie. I don't know, you know, if that's something that he has in his budget that he does or what, I don't know. But I just saw that and wanted to point it out. The other, on the expenditure side of this, that transfer to Fund 51. Now, Fund 51 is your landfill closure fund, that the mediation landfill closure, and every year we transfer $150,000 out of transportation into that fund, right? And we do that by a resolution. Every year y'all pass that resolution. This year we are not going to do that resolution. And the reason why is because for the past 2 or 3 years maybe, past 2 or 3 years, we've been transferring in $150,000. We have not been spending nearly that much. So there's $150,000 sitting in that account right now. So if you remember, the board is obligated up to $150,000 worth of expenditures towards the landfill closure. But with that money sitting there, there's no need to transfer more money in there, right? So what we did was, that's one way that we managed to balance the transportation fund, is that we didn't transfer the $150,000 there, but that's something to keep in mind for next year. We may have a transfer next year. It might not be $150,000. That's been about $20,000, $30,000. Yeah, so.
Did we transfer some out of this to pay for something not this year or last year?
Not out of the Fund 51 we did.
Yeah, they approved a transfer from 51 back to Fund 20 to pay for a greater.
Oh, yeah, that's right, okay. Yeah. That makes sense as to why there's not a ton of money there. There's about $155,000 in there, something like that. So there's enough that we don't have to transfer money, basically is what I'm getting at. So that's helps us out in Fund 20 this year. But again, the expenses out of that are about $30,000. So next year I would hope that our transfer would only be about $30,000. You know, so that thing is waning. I mean, and if you remember, I think it was my first year here. Robbie brought in the plan where they closed a bunch of the monitoring wells. Right. And that really cut down a ton of the cost, a ton of it. I mean, once that happened, that was like about what, $80,000 worth of monitoring.
That testing is expensive because they have to go off to labs and whatnot.
Right.
It's an expensive process.
So that really helped out a lot, and but I just wanted to point that out, that we're not doing that this year, and that's going to help us this year. Fund 40, again, this is your solid waste fund. they get special assessment money, they get money from collection services, and recyclables. So if you bear in mind that and they spend on tipping fees. Tipping fees is like one of their large expenditures, right? But if you keep in mind, Clay is trying to, and him, I don't want to steal his thunder, but he's trying to purchase a bigger baler so he can do more in recyclables, which ups his revenue, at the same time lowers his expenditure because he's not taking stuff to the landfill. The Fund 40 is realistically one of the most profitable funds that you have. You know, I mean, it does very well, and they're very good at keeping track of how they spend money. I just wanted to point that thing out, that he's trying to work that a little bit better too, which may help in the future with trying to have coverage at your collection sites. You know, maybe you might be able to hire more people if he's able to make it more profitable. And lastly, Fund 81. This is your fiscally constrained. They tell us how much money they project we're going to get from it every year. We put in there and budget it. These are the major things that we spend on in Fund 81. The land purchase for the land out at the interstate. This is the last year of that. That's $71,000. Next year you won't have that expenditure. I didn't put it in here, but you have a voting equipment lease that I didn't put in there. That's a $37,000 expenditure. This is the last year for the voting equipment lease. Is that correct?
Yes.
This year coming up.
Right.
This year coming. This is. I mean, when I say this year, I mean coming up year. Right.
Yeah.
The other things, the sheriff's vehicle, law enforcement, jail maintenance, all those things go to the sheriff. They equal about $125,000 total. And then we transfer, like I said, we transfer money to the general fund from here to help balance the general fund. And that's also where we pay for Mr. Dean, right? Same place we paid for Crawford, and then paying for Mr. Dean. I believe that's all I had for this. Yep. Do y'all have any questions before we move on a little bit about any of it? If you do, you can call me later, and it doesn't matter.
Good presentation.
Very good, yeah.
I'm hoping that helped you out a little bit, 'cause I get asked a lot, like, what are our funds and all that. That's why I printed it out for you, so that way you guys will have a copy of what the funds are and kind of give you an understanding, and, you know, just how it works and what we have to think about over there whenever, you know, it sounds easy to just move this money from here and do this, but it's a little more difficult than that most of the time. So moving on. So you'll have an agenda, right? I didn't schedule anybody before 9 o'clock because I was trying to get through my presentation. And I apologize, but to death. All right. So you have the schedule. I didn't schedule anybody before 9. The person I scheduled first is going to be Sherilyn. So that way she can kind of maybe talk about her budget. I can help her talk about it if she needs to. The other thing, too, is a recap. So this gives you like a snapshot of where we are. With a 1%, this is with a 14% increase in the health insurance and the tentative millage rate of 10. So I'm keeping the millage where y'all have it. 14% increase in health insurance. The new retirement rates, because of course those keep going up every year, and a 1% cost of living adjustment. We balanced all the funds except for the general fund. All right, so I don't have a whole lot that I can help out with to try to balance the general fund. I will say this though, the library increased their ask, and Ms. Betty is hoping she can be here. I think it's tomorrow or whenever she's on the list. No, she's here today, and she's last. She is hoping she can make it. She has an appointment in Gainesville, and if she can't, I can show you where the increase was. And she said, I understand that they can't do that because it's asked for a lot of books, but she did this budget kind of early on in the COVID, thought they'd be back to operating normally, and she doesn't expect that they're going to have a lot of books to buy, so, but she said maybe able to reduce that, but she'd like a little bump in her virtual platform stuff, so more than what she asked. So there may be $20,000 there. Is there another place right offhand that we had in mind? Not that we think of. I mean, there's still some things that we maybe could do, but it would be pulling from your reserves and things like that. And again, like I said, I want to make sure y'all understand, because all the uncertainty this year of what may come up, right? I could also look at increasing the amount of income that we think we're gonna have from interest. You know, I mean, we kind of just estimate that, you know, and that trend, if you looked at SBA, they present it every time at the college, right? Maybe I should do that too, is just present to y'all what the interest rate is. It has been steadily going down because it was almost 2%, I don't know, January maybe, and it's about 0.5% right now. So, I mean, it's been going down, but it's leveling at that 0.5. So, there's a few things we can do that we can maybe try to massage to try to get this. I don't know that there's much I could do to get more than 1%. You know what I mean? I just don't. I mean, I would like that as much as anybody else, but I just don't see that happening right offhand. Anyway, that's all I have, and like I said, 9 o'clock you got Sherilyn up. I was gonna go there and check on Gloria, make sure she was scheduled again.
I seen the peep in the window there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, good,
That,
good.
that overview was very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Oh, good.
good.
I'm glad.
Thank you very much.
That's
That was, very enlightening.
Well, good. And like I said, if y'all have questions, I mean, by all means, call. I don't mind answering questions. I don't know all the answers. I don't mind finding the answers to questions for you. That's the thing. That helps me to, you know, because like I said, I didn't know that grading services thing was in there for the transportation budget, you know. That may be a way to solve that.
Well, you know, we had talked about that in the past, you know, some of the subdivisions contracting with the.
The problem is that it's still private property.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that'd be a question. Tommy's supposed to be here today. He's gonna be presenting a little bit, so, I mean, that may be a question for him when he gets here. So he's also gonna be here just to talk about the TDC plan and the, what your steps would be if you wanted to do the MTSU or MSBU. I mean, he's gonna.
TSBU.
Did you get a chance to talk to Tommy, what we talked about trying to recoup some
No,
hospital money?
I haven't yet. And, oh, by the way, the hospital's not on here because they cannot come before September 1st. So she'll come, I told her I'd get her scheduled whenever we get her scheduled. Just board admin.
Probably missed the.
And my bad too, before Sherilyn goes to, I'm sorry, one of the things I wanted to mention, I know I told some of y'all, but I haven't told all of you. I spoke to Jefferson County on, last Wednesday or Thursday. Their county manager said if Madison wants to hire a debt service officer, they're on board. And they're gonna keep the same agreement, which, I mean, because we didn't break that agreement, we just haven't had anybody acting, which was, that person pays 40, or Jefferson County pays 40% of the person's salary and benefits. That's in this budget.
Okay.
If you look, it's in here. I also budgeted for a debt service person. So, in the way I budgeted for that person is I kept all the requests from the prior year all exactly the same, except for salary. And what I did was I looked at when Brian had advertised, right before we pulled that advertisement back, that salary range was 30 to 35. I just went down the middle and assumed 33. If y'all want to increase or decrease that, you know, it's up to you guys. I just picked a number to put in the budget.
As far as I'm concerned, it's still in the budget this year.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I don't know if it's not an agenda, just for just throwing it out there, I would go ahead and advertise and start moving forward if it's in this year's budget already.
Right. I told them that it might be
Or
October.
become on
Yeah.
upcoming budget.
But I said, and Jefferson County was fine with that. They understood. I said, hey, once we get through our budget and get it approved, it'll probably start, and then that way we'll have them October 1, and they were totally fine with that.
But I wouldn't think we need to wait till October 1.
No.
Do it in there.
No.
I mean, you go ahead and advertise and hire them.
I agree with Rick, we need to go ahead and advertise and let's get it going.
And you did say the other thing, you said is they wanted to advertise in Jefferson County.
Yes, they
Yeah,
also,
that's right.
they also asked would we advertise over there.
Yeah.
And I told them I don't see any, I didn't think that, I always, just so y'all know, I always preempt everything with, I don't speak for my board, but I told them I don't think that y'all would have a problem with that.
Right. No problem.
You know. I try my best, y'all, to not speak on y'all's behalf, I'm telling you. Go ahead, I'm
Do
sorry.
you want to talk about the salary first of all?
Yes,
The way
I
you-
do, yes, I do.
Okay.
Before she gets up and presents, I'll present a little bit of hers. If you turn to page, I think it's page
7,
7.
yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Starts toward the bottom, 01040.
Yes, 010-40, down at the bottom. Now, it starts with a salary for a county coordinator. Everybody there? Okay, so I had to pick some salary amount, right, for Sherilyn to go with. I picked 62,500. Okay, that salary gets split out between, the general fund, transportation trust fund, solid waste, and EMS. All right, so whenever you look through those funds, you're gonna see salary for county coordinator, and it's done by percentage, you know, and the percentages are odd. They're like 42.6 go into the general fund, 27 point something go into a different fund. That's how they're split out. And so you're gonna see that here, and that's the number that I picked. If there's another number, y'all tell me and I'll adjust, but just wanna let y'all know 62.5 is what I picked. And the thinking there behind that was, that would put her above everybody, all the other county employees. You know, if there's something else y'all wanna do, y'all come talk to me, call me or whatever, but anyway, now I'll turn it back to her.
And, the one thing that was added in there was the longevity bonus. So depending on what happens with the county manager position, this coming up fiscal year will be 15 years that I've been with the county. So that would make me eligible for that longevity bonus. Obviously because of what he explained with the salary, that affects some of those bottoms, toward the bottom with the FICA and the retirement, the health insurance, and life insurance right now, would be mine. If you look on page 8, random drug testing, of course, you know, the thought there is, you know, we are subject to that, and depending on how many times, we base that on the rates that Airport Medical charges us in our agreement with them. Rentals and leases, basically that just went up. Sometimes we go over and we pull from another line item to help cover that, so this is just to keep that from happening. And then other current charges is we put 100 in there. That's almost in theory like a petty cash fund for things that may come up unexpectedly that don't necessarily fit another line item. That money's available. If you'll look, the office supplies decreased, and so that's where some of that came from. So instead of 1,300 for office supplies, it's 1,000, so we put 100 of that in that other current charges line item. So it's not necessarily an increase in the budget because we did reduce that line item. Then if you go down, the books, publications, subscriptions, and memberships, that's where a lot of the registration fees for things like FAC, the fee to be a part of the Florida Association of County Managers, things like that, it comes from that line item. Then if you keep dropping down, the way the clerk's office has done it before is this 010-40 includes what was considered admin, which has been the county coordinator position and assistant county coordinator position up to this point. And then also has included the planner. That's all been included instead of having planning and zoning a separate one, it's kind of been in that 01040. But it's broken out into, instead of 512, it's 515. So if you keep following down, you'll see where it starts with planning salary. It goes through the FICA and retirement, the health insurance. There's no health insurance that's budgeted for that position right now because Renee is covered by her husband's insurance, so she's not a part of the county's insurance. So that's why that's at 0.
So I had a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use the county's insurance, but the county pays, well, no, my bad. I was thinking about not the insurance. So it's just a pet peeve for me that the county is having to pay on behalf of me that that the county doesn't get a benefit of. You're in the same boat.
Same
What
boat,
is that?
and
That's
also-
retirement.
Well,
No,
also
retirement.
retirement, that's fine.
I just got,
The other pet peeve I've got is the retirement thing, Billy's heard it, and so has Katrina about, and Donna about, they're paying $8,000 or whatever the number is every dadgum month for our retirement, and
we
I'm
don't
not
get a
gonna,
benefit of it.
You'll never
in
see
the
it.
there's no
county.
benefit.
So,
And that's, we're getting
there's
hammered.
a potential several $1,000s the county could save
Yeah.
that we shouldn't have to be paying, the county shouldn't have to be paying. I don't mean to get off track.
No,
I
you're
apologize
fine.
for that. But anyways, we'll talk about
Well, it's
that.
our soapbox.
I just knew there was a large amount of money that's being paid on my name. I'm not, we're not getting the benefit of it.
Yep.
Right.
That's how they
Go
keep
ahead.
that unfunded actuarial liability, that's how they keep that.
Yeah.
They're just dumping your money in there, because they know they're never gonna pay your money out.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
One thing we did different this year, and if you'll look at the bottom three, starting with planning office supplies, planning operating supplies, and planning books, subscriptions, and membership, previously those were zero, because previously all of that was included in the admin line items. It was all together. So we just, to make it easier and cleaner, we just actually broke it out this year. So even though she's still considered part of the admin, her operating supplies, office supplies, she has memberships and stuff that she's a part of. We've just broken it out, so those are actually now separate line items. And so that's why you see amounts budgeted specifically for those now. Really, there weren't any major changes other than separating those out and cleaning that up a little bit, and then, of course, what Billy explained with the salary portion.
What are the maintenance costs again? What do they go to? Is that part of our, just the building maintenance or?
So that's separate. A lot of this is things like maintenance for the website. This is, maintenance for the vehicle, county vehicles, oil changes, tires, things with.
Well, I was referring to 4602, it says maintenance agreements. Fourth
From the bottom.
You're in Billy's.
Oh, that's Billy's. That's
I'm sorry, I didn't
01050.
see where
Okay.
it broke.
That's
that's not ours, that's separate.
Okay, gotcha.
Just to let y'all know, those are software maintenance. There's how you pay this maintenance agreement every year, software, phones, things like that. That's what comes out of there in my office.
I have a question. You said her salary was 62. Is that the one, I'm trying to find it on there. Is that where it says salary county coordinator, 451211, 1100? So that's, I'm about 10 from the bottom there.
Yep, 512, 1100, yes it is. And remember, that's just a portion of it.
Oh,
Because
okay.
a portion of it comes out of the general fund, a portion of it comes out of transportation, a portion of it comes out of,
Well, I saw
solid waste.
2662, that's what threw me.
Yes, it's just a 42.66% comes out of the general fund.
Okay, all right.
Don't
I guess
ask me
I
the
was
other
looking for
percentages, that's the only one I can remember.
I was looking for the 62 and couldn't find it, that's what threw me. Okay, I'm sorry.
If y'all got any questions, I think Gloria's here, if y'all wanna get a little ahead.
Good morning,
Good
everyone.
morning.
Hey, Lori.
Do I need to come up there, or am I good here, or?
I hear you.
You're here.
If y'all are looking at my budget, you'll see that, it has gone down almost $3,000. For this year, it was my longevity fund,
Hold on just a
Whoa,
second.
whoa, 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 whoa.
What page we on?
Page 6.
page 6.
Sorry.
Scared us too fast.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I was just looking myself.
Trying to find you. That's all right.
Or 10:25. About,
10:25.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. It went down almost $3,000 because, I had my longevity bonus, which was the 500. The travel, because of COVID, I'm doing my webinar training, and we had operating supplies, which we got new computers, and which you all budgeted that in when Mr. Rick Anderson talked about the computers for our office. So all of that has changed. So with the new budget, it's gonna be almost, $2,800 less. I'm not requesting anything new. I don't anticipate needing anything. And I do understand, as long as the money's in the budget, if we have to do a budget amendment, that's still fine, it's not going over the budget. Or anything I need to change, or y'all want me to change?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to take a moment to thank Gloria for all the hard work she's done this past year, because I've had several things in my district that she's had to look into, and she's done a wonderful job on it.
I have to look good to make sure the commissioners look good.
We need all the help we can get.
Teamwork.
We need all the help.
Some of the webinars I also want to take is kind of like cross-training, not just for my code enforcement. I work in the building department, I have a login for that, so I want to try to take some of their courses so I can better understand and kind of fit in whenever we're running short of something, which I have some knowledge, but I want to get better at it. So that's pretty much it.
Anybody got any more
All right,
questions?
man, thank you, Gloria.
Yep, thanks, Gloria.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Keep up the good work.
All right, you
Yeah.
too.
I'll walk next door to make sure he knows he's up.
I got, Mr. Chair, while we're waiting, a general question. I guess all our computers are at Windows 10.
Ours are, I don't know about that.
We have a couple that may need to be upgraded.
Because I know for a fact that can give you a problem sometimes when you're not very sure.
Been looking into the solar stuff.
I found.
Well, keep inundated with emails.
What's up, Tom?
Tom, how are you? Rested up?
No, not yet. Still trying.
What page we gonna start on?
What page?
Page 3,
Page,
bottom of page 3,
Spring.
and top of 4.
Morning. Y'all doing all right?
that's
The
from.
very bottom, the last two lines of page 3.
Okay. 10. Everybody there?
Yeah. Not much change on our budget from last year to this year. Some things though that on the line items, we gotta correct some line items last minute with, mom, dad, stroke, the whole 9 yards we've been through. I hadn't got to move some money around, but if you look at like our IT cost, when I started this, it was $500. Today it's, a month. Today it's $5,500 a month. And so I need to move those line items around in those areas to show, hey, wait, here's some increases in some areas where we're saving on some other areas. But ours is pretty simple. It's not much different than last year.
we're at different times for tech support now. Security, cybersecurity, it's a whole different, and it'll continue up from that. We're not,
But it's funny, we forgot about cybersecurity. Now there's something else in the forefront, but it's
but
still.
it's still there.
We were getting hit on average $10,000 times a day, and they're predicting it'll go up to 30,000 to 40,000 times a day closer to the election.
Yeah.
We're not open any attachments, we're not. Cheryl Lynn on y'all's meetings, that's the only attachment I'll open up.
While we were talking about that, and I want to bring this up, when we may be interested in doing it, we're doing cybersecurity classes. All the directors for Tri-County are on a website and on an email. And they have a program that's put together, and they're doing online training. You're sending an email out, and it talks to you, and it shows you the phishing and those type of things, and it's a free thing, so.
We have to do that annually as well, and have to, as part of our.
It's just some things that are, it's simple, but, I may, if anybody's interested, I'll see if we can.
One of the neat things the college does, and I think it's
They'll
pretty
send
cool.
out a few.
They'll send out a
Test.
phishing email, and if you click on it, you have to take that training again.
You know,
It just directs you to that training.
Yeah, I've had a few of my people, luckily, I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't had to retake the training, because I'm very suspicious.
Well, a couple of years ago, the number one thing that was hit on was free ice cream from a truck outside. And even in counties like Madison, people were clicking on wanting that free ice cream, to carry that coupon.
Too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
But, I will be watching, because I'm sure they'll be doing the trick. Which is now
I just know the college does it, and I think it's hilarious.
You get that congratulations email?
I don't get spam email or emails like that from the college, thankfully, but I mean, I don't answer hardly the one that do get.
Well, the neat thing about that with ours is if you hit that phishing icon, you'll get a message saying it's been sent for review. And actually, I've had Nick call me a few times, say, yeah, that one would be okay to open, it's actually for this, this, and this. But then, every now and then, I've had a few say, I'm gonna take that class over again.
I got it the other day, and rather than even opening it, I picked up the phone and called the IT guy and said, hey, is this for real? He said, that's a good way to test it if you're in doubt. Anyhow.
I was just, I know we did some stuff with the grant versus, how's that going?
The state's been a hiccup on it, to be honest, because we had to do a lot of upfront costs. And, we were supposed to get that money 2 weeks ago, and we hadn't gotten it as of, Friday. So we did a budget amendment, you'll see that in your packet for $5,000, I don't remember the exact amount, $5,700, I believe.
Yeah, 5,776.
And it's to cover that. They have promised me that money should be here today or tomorrow. And so as soon as we get that, then we'll be ready. We've asked for more money on their side. I know the county's got $3.4 million. Our problem is we gotta pay for that stuff now.
I think we approved that, but then that money that comes back in, it come back and.
Yep, comes to y'all. $50,000 will come back to y'all.
Where are we at? Billy mentioned earlier, we were talking about some, lease on voting equipment. This will be the last year on the voting equipment lease.
Yes, and I would, for the next supervisor, I'm gonna advise him to get new equipment, even if it's the same equipment, because we're starting to see little hiccups, and it's not nothing major, as y'all know.
You'd mentioned that, well, the sorting, order fees.
Yep, they're gonna fix that for free, because it's under that lease agreement. But they do have a new, that's on Windows 7, now they have, Windows 10, so it will be an updated version of Windows, but still, I would turn that back in, go with the new lease, and just get all new equipment coming in, because the things are, you know how it is, stuff, and the average life of a computer, I think, was 5 years, I think it's down to 3 now, or maybe 2 as quick as it's going, so I'm gonna advise the next supervisor to jump on board on that.
Tommy, with the, changes we made as far as the voting precincts, do we still have the same amount of voting machines? We cut back on that also?
We can cut way back on it. But on the absentee, just so I got y'all together, I can't be here Wednesday. We had 1,162 come in, we only rejected 23, and they haven't been rejected. I don't think the canvassing board and the alternate. It was a good election, only had a handful of hiccups, but those hiccups are great to have.
I was so surprised at the low percentage count. I think we were at, what, about 37%.
The state of Florida had 28%.
I was going to say, that's.
I was gonna say, yeah, probably higher than that.
Well, let's just be happy that, we didn't have anything like Wakulla or Franklin County. Didn't you say, one of the commissioners was?
Yeah, Ricky Jones, commissioner, thought he like, when they counted the last precinct, he won by 12 votes.
We had that 2 vote one back here.
That's right, we did, didn't we?
Well, they actually had another one.
Wakulla,
Wakulla, huh? Hardy County, yeah, I think Hardy County has it.
Now.
Yeah,
So they're going
Right.
to do a ballot.
yeah, they've gotta go back, they're doing a recount down Hardy.
There was a 2 vote difference there, and then at
Yeah.
the time, the recount.
Yeah.
This
we don't want, in Wakulla, there was only 3 votes difference in the,
Something like that.
property appraiser or something.
Yeah.
Now is when I get to catch up and look at theirs. I think the business.
I think of your,
Yeah.
I thought, when I saw that, I think of the prayer, yeah. Don't care who wins, just let them win big.
Now, Taylor County, they had to hand recount everything. She had a problem with her.
They were going about 5 o'clock in the morning.
And we got the same time. It wasn't that, it was a memory card malfunction. And so all you do is get a new one, rerun it through, and they literally hand fed every ballot back through.
Gosh.
Just changing up while we've got a little bit of time, and, I know Alfred and I were on the canvassing board, the, cures form, was that a new, where you had it earlier that you could reach out to people? I think you mentioned.
We started canvassing earlier than normal, so we could get the word out, hey, you need to fix this, you need to fix this. But that cures thing went through back in 2016, that judge who made us do that, and it's a good thing.
Well, when your office did real good, so there's only a handful, the ones that we had to reject was, they just didn't come in or would label, could get in touch with them, but, it really made sure every vote counted.
And for y'all, if we got a little bit of extra money, we're looking at the new room, where we used to vote, putting a window there, and letting that be where the voters or the candidates sit. And then move through that glass, that bigger room for canvassing. Just because of COVID and the spacing out and that kind of thing, when we were sitting around talking, that was the idea we had. And I think it'd be a win-win. Now, the back office worked well, but that last day they were hammered. And somebody said, you're not limiting people coming in? No. But, I mean, if you want to space out, there's enough you can space out. But everybody, what little votes we had, they showed up that last day. And used to, and as a candidate and as me, I'd rather push somebody to early vote. That way you can get a list of everybody that voted that day, and then you can call the rest of them.
Anybody got any more questions?
I think that window would be a good idea. It's gonna be crowded in there, the different parties, then we got, and then people, and then the media, you know.
That way we space them out. Tom, this your last one?
Yes, sir. Thank goodness.
Did a good job.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all. Y'all got any more questions?
Thank you, Tom.
Emergency management, no, Tom, if you want to take a break for a minute or two.
Yeah.
I scheduled a break later, but I mean,
If I can, real quick,
Yes.
I didn't, we didn't really have any need to re-present unless you guys have any questions. Our original budget was presented with a 3% increase, it's since been reduced to 1%. Overall, we're about $57,000 more this year than we were in last year's budget. And I don't know how, unless you take the 1%, I can get it in. If you take the 1%, I'll be less than I was last year. I mean, it's hacked pretty hard.
We appreciate the
But
whole.
I guess, just so you know, I can hear from everybody and do it, right now, looking at $145,000.
Yeah, I got it.
We'll have to make that somewhere, so we
Yeah.
have to see it across the board. what we
Right.
have to do.
Good day.
Monday.
Good day.
Yeah.
See you. Yes, sir.
You're up.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. Good morning.
Page
Have,
14, page 14, sorry, Lee. See, this is gonna be in the wrong fund.
We have to do the separate funds for our EMTG grant, our EMTA grant, and our county match. That's one of those stipulations of our grant, funding, so that's why you see those broken down like that. We have the two main grants coming in this year for the EMTG, which is the $44,216. That grant we use solely for director salary. $44,247, sorry. I was looking at the wrong number. So that is, all we use that federal grant for. This year, we do have an additional supplemental grant, that is EMTGS, as you'll see there, for $8,258.67. That is an additional grant that the state, and feds gave us, but it has any cost or reimbursement has to have a COVID nexus. So the plan for that right now is I wanted to upgrade the UV, AV stuff back in the operations room. So if we have to long-term continue with these type of teleconferencing meeting formats, that our system is upgraded and capable of doing any type of that. So I anticipate at least half of that going to that project, and the other half can also be used for salary costs as well. Our EMTA grant is our state-funded grant that we receive funds for from the insurance costs that you see on your insurance bill. $2 a year from every Florida resident. We use those funds as our main operating fund for all our utilities. Renata's salary would come solely out of that pot of money, and any additional salary left over from the director comes out of the EMTA as well, and that's kind of how we've always handled that. Our county match is $25,000. We are again requesting that from the commissioners. We have a stipulation within our EMTA grant that we have to match at least the last 3 years' amount. So we don't get $25,000, then we don't get $105. So it kind of helps us out to on our rate there. We also have a prior year reserve that you'll see listed there. That is FEMA reimbursement that has come in previous years, and that specifically, whenever the building flooded a few years with, back with Debbie and then with Irma, I believe, we got cost reimbursement for those damages, and we have extended some of those for when we repainted the buildings several years ago with that special protection. Carpeting will be replacing both those front offices. That I've been trying to do that for a year. It's very difficult to get the same kind of carpet that was put in the office building 10 years ago. So that is to be shipped out on the 25th. So that will be happening soon as well. But basically, we don't have any other major changes other than that EMTGS grant we added. Most of our costs stay relatively the same. This year will be our last payment on the 2017 expedition of $5,018.41. But that will be paid off at the end of this next year budget. There, Billy mentioned your numbers may be a little off from mine because they changed some stuff around for the 1%. There is also additional room in there for other salary adjustments.
One thing down on operating supplies, it went from 5,500 to 20,000.
Yeah.
That's about 10 up from the bottom.
Line item 5,200.
5,200.
Let's see.
A little below middle.
I have I see the 20,000, I have the 15,236.
Where do you see 15?
That's my, yes, you're right. It did go from anticipated, that did go up. Most of our costs now, that is where we pull from. Our copiers, any other just.
I'd imagine a lot of that cost is whenever you have everybody out at the EOC during emergency times,
That's what
her costs go way up, and that's where she's pulling that money from,
Okay.
out of that part.
It was a
That
pretty
is,
big
that is a
swing.
big jump from the 55 to 15, yeah.
What's the prior year reserves on the revenue side? 14,000.
That's where she said that they had a refund coming from a prior year expenditure that they're now getting reimbursed on.
This is grant funded type deal that goes back into that same fund
Yes.
instead of the general.
Yes, they get back, like I said, all they're giving her is 25,000. The other thing is too, to keep in mind, and she mentioned it, is that 25,000, you're given that because that's what you're given prior.
Mhm.
So if you ever up that amount, for whatever reason,
Yes.
you're gonna be obligated at that amount then, from then on, but at the same time, you're gonna get a larger match, is that correct? Am I right in saying that?
No, that's a legislative change that has to come, because that 105,806, that's that EMPA grant, so that has to come from the
It
state.
is tied to the 25,
Mhm.
okay. Oh, well, never mind. Forget I mentioned anything.
Sure, we'll disregard the last question.
Yeah, I can see where your office was activated. It was a command central for us.
Yes, yes.
You think about the number of people that are coming through there, I mean.
Oh, yeah, it was a nightmare there for a while, I'm sure. A lot of expenses.
And that, yeah, so that was going off that year to date, when I was doing the budgeting. That was the 15,236.
She has a different sheet than y'all are.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Her year-to-date number right now is 15,000, so she's trying to.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Sorry
She
about
was
that.
only budgeted 55 last year, so
Right.
year to date.
I got a question. Is CARES gonna, be reimbursing you on a lot of the stuff that's happened
Yes.
over the last 6 months?
We actually are eligible for some FEMA reimbursement, first, if we want to go that route. If that's the decision that the committee and really the board would want to think about. We have the PA, the agreement you signed a few meetings back. We can submit our salary, anybody that was working in the EAC, we can submit that to FEMA for 75% reimbursement. That was my plan. However, something to think about is if we change routes on that and go to CARES, you're gonna get 100% reimbursement on that. So I have that stuff ready and listed out and ready to go. Alan, is also working on his numbers for that. So we have that ready to go if we wanna go that route. We just kinda have to decide, I guess, once our committee meets and looks at all the expenditures plan, how we wanna do that. So yeah, a lot of that can come out of that.
Anybody got any more questions on the list?
One thing, and I would just ask Shirley maybe to look at, lease salary. I know she's been promised was promised a salary adjustment. So if you'll kind of look at that, and I would like us to kind of deal with that, so.
And if there's any way we can
Yeah.
It's in
work
there.
out some of these, it's in there?
Yeah.
Like, it's in the numbers, like if that were to happen, it's within my budget, I can
Yeah,
operate
that's
without
what I'm saying, we can
additional.
adjust it in
She'd
the
have to,
budget.
yeah, she'd have to come back and figure that out.
Right.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank
All right.
you, Lee.
All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate all the work.
Dan, you're up.
Thank you. I appreciate all the paperwork in the past.
Yeah, man.
This is our new economic, that the university just came out with within the last week or two.
It's 010-31, page 7.
Page 7.
Thank you, sir.
31.
Yes.
Yes.
So again, I appreciate the support in the past that the commission's had for extension office. I know we're a little bit hard to kind of show results compared to the road department or someone like that that's out there and about, but we're still open and dealing with the customers and the citizens of the county. Beth has been really discouraged because she can't hug the kids. She's been a wonderful addition to the extension office. She really has. She's gone full force with it. 4-H, I think, overall has really gone strong with where we're at now in this Zoom computer meeting era. They've really done a lot with the kids and trying to interact with kids and stuff, so that's really, really a good thing. The sheet that I gave you, obviously, it's got some numbers on it, the different funding things. There's one I'd like for you to look at. It's got our county funding, which of our total budget, that's 26%. They figured the state funds basically comes from specialists. Live Oak has the research center over there, and they've got 5 specialists over there that actually come and help in the county as well. So some of that's involved with that. And then our clientele contacts, that's the other thing. Field and office consultations, that's just the number of people we see. Group participants, again, that's something the people of the community mostly. Some of those are meetings that are regional meetings, but mostly community type events. And then phone and email consultations, of course, that's the levels that we're dealing with there on that. So we do touch a lot of people, and we do have a pretty good reach on where we're going. Although right now it's challenging, meeting especially, trying to have meetings. We've gone back to phase 2, which is only 10 people. That's limited what we can do, but the pesticide part, I can still do pesticide licenses. People are still coming to the office, and I'm answering their questions, whether it's weeds or whatever, so we're still open. We've not closed completely. In regards to the budget, the family consumer science position was frozen, so that's the majority of the cut that we had. I've been able to reach out to the surrounding counties and their family consumer science agents to help with various questions or concerns that people have, whether it's money management, health issues, things of that nature. But that's where our biggest cut came. The only thing I really see that increased was the retirement increased just a little bit, and then the health insurance increased by just over $1,000. Taking out the salaries and all from the family consumer science position, that drops us 9.1% on the decrease, from 172.9 to 157.2. Actually, the things that I can control come out to a total of about $18,800, and that's repairs and maintenance, operating supplies, office supplies, fuel, books, publications, and things of that nature. Which those all stayed the same, but this year, I'm sure I'll be giving back money. We had travel restrictions, so we weren't able to travel. A lot of that goes into conferences and traveling to conferences for in-service trainings. If there's any questions, I'll certainly answer.
I see, almost exactly opposite of what we have with ENC. Your operating supplies went down because your office was shut down for so long.
Well, what I did, I moved on the operating supplies, I moved $15,000 out of salary down there, just so we could do the new phone system of a little over $4,000, and I'm looking at doing some more upgrades in technology, computers and things like that in our office, and hopefully get some more tables and chairs. Our chairs are kind of in pretty bad shape. But it was the same. It was actually $3,000 last year. I just moved that money down to that line.
Anybody got any questions or comments of Mr. Dan?
Look good. Thank you,
Real
Dan.
good, Dan.
What you doing?
Well,
Mr. Chair, just one question, not budget related, but what about the upgrades at the, 4-H camp? Have they started that?
I'm pretty sure they've broken ground out there. I know they were in the process of doing it and working on that pavilion, I think, first. Which, unfortunately, this is a good opportunity to do it with the camp being shut down.
Yeah, I hadn't been in the area a while. I went to the initial meeting where they had the, all the dignitaries from the surrounding counties and whatnot. Just hadn't been there in a while.
That's a very good project, and I'm glad they're taking that on to upgrade it, because it has been a outdated type facility with chicken coops, as they call them, for the kids to stay in, with no air conditioning and everything.
I stayed in there when I was.
Yeah, long overdue, long overdue.
I know Mr. Morris Steve was one of the leaders on that, and he came to our board a while back to inquire.
Morris has been the ramrod on that for sure. He really pushed it.
Big plus.
Thank you, Mr.
Not related, have you had a chance to get the picture and flag up?
Got them right there, and they're ready to hang it up. I figured out where I'm gonna put them, and we had to touch up the wall a little bit, add a few little things on the wall, so.
Well, then everybody in there right now, it doesn't matter, but I just wondered. I know you,
I got
I
all
know you've
three
been
of them,
hammered.
because there was a plaque in the hallway too, so we
Yeah,
got the plaque
yeah,
there, so I
right.
got all three of them.
Good, yeah. I knew the one, the hallway was gonna move.
Ready to place it, yes, sir, we appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Mr. Rudy did a wonderful job back in
He did.
this time.
He was a cornerstone of the community.
He was one of the first extension agents that was awarded like full professorship at the university.
Go back and read his, bio and everything, what he's accomplished here and everything. He's one of the trendsetters for the state.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate what you do.
Anything we can help y'all with.
Okay.
Thank you.
Come see us.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all. Thanks, Terry.
All right, we're ahead of time. We've got PDC, and I see Mr. Bobby's here. You want to just move on?
Yeah,
Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you also, I think that Tommy Griggs is also gonna present a little bit to TDC. I'll give him a call, I'll walk out and call him real quick.
We'll let Bobby get started.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right.
What page went on, Bobby?
So, I don't know. 30.
Page what?
30.
30.
So this is my first time to do this. Before I start, I want to say that we have been spending money. This has nothing to do with the coming year, but you know that the money for the roof is now, is underway, being spent. And Thursday night, we allocated $30,000 for the Madison Youth Soccer Organization. So things are happening. For this coming budget year, we first met with Billy to ask him what we might anticipate in terms of tourist tax dollars coming in, since we could anticipate a big change in that. His advice was that we stick with the $130,000 number, so we've done that. I think we could anticipate maybe more, maybe less, so there may have to be some adjustments. The other numbers there didn't change, and so we are working with a budget of $210,050. The big changes, so this is the second budget we did. The first one had to do with if we split, and we built in a salary and office expenses. This one is redone, so you will see at the bottom that there are a number of items that have no budget number. I didn't remove those items when I resubmitted the budget, just so our council would be able to keep track of what we were doing. On line 16, you'll see that we have $48,000 to go to the chamber for administrative expenses. That had been removed, and we've now returned it. On line 18, that is a $30,000 amount. We had intended for this coming year to allocate a large amount of money for media, to develop a big media program to bring tourists in to Madison. Thursday night, we met with Joel Silver, who is with Fox News, local Fox News in Tallahassee, and he has a television show on Thursday nights at 10:30 called, I think it's called Live, and it's all good news. We can become a title sponsor for his show for $300 a month, and that gives us access to commercials and to highlighting events going on here. We haven't voted to do that yet, but it's likely we will do that. So we decided that instead of going for a great big media project, we will go with Joel Silver's program for much less amount. When he does clips for Madison, those then can be downloaded to our website. So we will have begun a big media project, and we'll have our ducks in a row much better for the next budget year.
Bobby, what local channel is that?
40.
40?
Fox 40, I think it is. 40.
I apologize, I don't know.
Might depend on what you use, Dish or
Direct TV.
And that's a good idea, because, you know, we're gonna probably pull more people from the Tallahassee, the Big Bend area for tourism than we from well away.
Yes,
So start small and see how it works and then grow from there, so that's a good idea.
that's what we were thinking. His area is pretty big. It goes to Mariana and all the way to the water and then over this way. So we thought that was nice, and he was very excited. He heard this presentation about what the soccer organization is doing, and he said, boy, when you've got that going, let me know, I'm going to come cover it. So he was very upbeat about the things that we're doing here. And and the other thing that we did then, money that we had allocated for media, we moved into grants. So we now have $73,500 available for grant funding for the coming year. The other two minor things are that we set aside $200 for phones for our new employee and $800 for the expense, the monthly expense for phones. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as it has been. And again, we balanced at $210,050.
Anybody got any questions, Ms. Bobby?
I've got one question, I think, for Billy.
Yeah, go ahead.
When does the county start seeing the revenue from the, what Brian Faircloth has done, it's kind of close.
So the revenues, as they come in, they're all paying their portion of the taxes.
Yeah.
So when they pay their portion of taxes, we see it back in the next month.
Oh, because by.
Right, so, or say that, it's roughly about that time.
Well, it goes to Tallahassee, then back.
Yeah, it goes part of revenue and then they pay it back to us. Yeah. Now, there is an option, and I certainly don't want to do this, but I mean, there's an option for us to collect that tax directly. I don't know what that looks like, but there are other counties that they directly collect their tourist tax. You know, the thing about that is I guess beneficial in my mind at least is that you have somebody who could put the pressure on some of these Airbnbs and places like that, you know, I assume they're paying their tax. I don't know how Airbnb works. You know what I mean? But, you know, there may be some of those kind of things that could be slipping under that you just don't know.
Do we have Airbnbs?
Cherry Lake is full of them. All around Cherry Lake, a lot of those are rental houses now. People bought them, and you can go rent a house in Cherry Lake.
Isn't that changed from, 2 years ago? Because I thought we looked at that.
There was only a few of them.
Yeah, I thought we only had one or two.
Quite a few of them.
Yeah, but that industry has grown
we are getting a lot out of Cherry Lake that maybe we don't know, we don't know whether we're getting or not.
I don't know that. I'm just saying, I'm speculating to an extent.
Yeah, but
There could be some there. So.
That creates a headache for your office, doesn't it?
Well, for whoever's office collects that tax. I'm not volunteering to collect that tax.
I know you're not volunteering, okay? Well,
What happens is DOR takes 5% of your revenue in order to do that. So you've got to be bringing in enough revenue that 5% of that will cover Billy adding somebody.
Your admin costs may be higher.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So like, if you have a county like a Walton or an Okaloosa, it makes perfect sense for them because they're bringing in millions of dollars.
Yeah, but I don't think we generate enough.
And the reason I know that the clerk in Flagler County, his office collects that tax.
Yeah.
Somebody in his office does. He said they really had to go out and start hitting a lot of Airbnbs real hard. He was not a fan of that. He let the tax collector try to take people's money. He didn't want to have to be the person who takes people's money.
Does the state have any enforcement on the Airbnbs?
I don't know how that works. To tell you the truth. I have no idea. So.
But it seems like the Department of Revenue should have some guidelines for locals if they want to do that.
I'm sure they.
Yeah, but I don't think we make enough money to do it.
Your admin costs may greatly outweigh.
Right.
But that is an opportunity for the Tourist Development Council and the bed tax, if there's a way of tracking that, as it comes back out and benefits, goes back in.
It'd be nice to know where we're getting it, but I don't know whether.
Any more questions of Ms. Bobby?
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. I have one other, I have a request of you, please. I heard your last meeting and Mr. Reed's, suggestion that there be a workshop on the, possible taxes that can be brought in. I reported that to TDC, and we would like to be included in the workshop when you have it. They were very enthusiastic about that education.
Sure.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
You have a presentation?
Just, a brief one. One of the dangers of having been here a little while is that I forget which of my boards have presented things to. I don't think we have actually gone over what the tourist development tax, the amount you are levying, the amount you can levy, and the uses for that since this board has been together. And I thought it might be a good idea to do that, where y'all can just know what you've got and what you can do and those types of things. Not saying you got to change anything, but you need to know that there's some options. First thing I'd like, if you would, is take one of these and pass them around. Now, this is and there'll be some others. There's enough for everybody. But when you get this is the sheet from the 2019 Local Government Handbook. Comes out in November 2019, so it's the best we got right now. And this is the sheet that shows the total amount of tax y'all can levy, the total amount you are levying, and then what that brings in. So if you look at kind of the bottom of the sheet, I've got a little arrow by it. It says Madison County. And then it's got the first column, the 49,000 figure, is the estimated tax revenue for 1% tax, right? So 1%, they estimate, will bring in 49,064. Now, that's before COVID, so we don't know if those numbers are still good or how long it may take to come back to those numbers. But anyway, that was the estimate in November 2019. Next column, maximum potential rate is 5. So you can levy 5 pennies. Next column, the 2019 tax rate is 3. So we're presently levying 3 pennies of the 5 we could levy. So y'all could raise it another 2 pennies if you want. Now, keep on going. The 147 figure, that's what you're bringing in right now with your 3 pennies. So you should be bringing in about that amount of money. The unutilized tax rate, the next one is the 2 pennies. And then what would that 2 pennies bring in, do they estimate, if you levied it? They estimate it would bring in another $98,127. So if you chose to levy the entire 5 pennies, you're probably looking at taking you from 147 to about, 240 in there somewhere, okay? So that is and that does not require a referendum. You had to have a referendum to levy the original amount. You do not have to have a referendum to go higher. Okay, so that's totally up to this board. So, and then, what I've done here, and if y'all would take one of these and pass them around.
Tom, one quick question. That, referendum does not sunset, does it?
Does not.
Okay.
Does not. Now, you all have the ability, you can stop levying it if you want to.
Right.
But you're not, there's no automatic sunset, there's no automatic, it goes away. Now, if you've ever tried to look at 125-0104, that is a great example of a statute built by committee. Because what happens is, they started out with a reasonably, understandable statute, and then every year somebody come in and add a little bit here, and somebody come in and add a little bit here, and it's gotten to where it's kind of hard to read. And it's got a lot of stuff that doesn't apply to us, like it's got some things for counties over 1 million in population and, all that. What I did was, this is 125-0104, and I went through, and you see the parts that are starred, those are things that don't apply to us. I've just kind of deleted the stuff that doesn't apply to us, trying to make it a little bit easier where y'all can read it, because like I said, it's not just easy. So, y'all will go to page 4 of 7, number 5. And so we start with, all tax revenues received pursuant to this section. Now, when you talk about a statute, the section is 125-0104. The subsection is when you talk about A, B, C, all of that. So that's talking about everything. All tax revenues received pursuant to this section by the county shall be used for the following purposes. And so you got 1, to acquire, construct, extend, enlarge, remodel, repair, improve, maintain, operate, promote one or more. And then you've got several things listed there. 1 is a publicly owned, operated convention center, sports stadiums, sports arenas, etc. B, auditoriums that are publicly owned but are operated by organizations that are exempt from federal taxation pursuant to 501c3 and open to the public. Or C, aquariums or museums that are publicly owned or operated, not-for-profit organizations. Now, those are things that could be done with that money. If the board, what you would have to do, and I'm not saying do it, but I want y'all to know you have options. And what you would do is you would want to, if you wanted to look at doing some of that, you'd get your tourist development council together. You'd say, hey, we want y'all to look at this. Y'all take a look and give us a recommendation as to what you want to do. And then, of course, the ultimate decision comes back to the board. Number 2, to promote zoological parks. I don't know that we have any zoological parks. Number 3, and this is what most everything we've been doing it comes under, to promote and advertise tourism in this state and nationally and internationally. However, if tax revenues are expended for an activity, service, venue, or event, it must have as one of its main purposes the attraction of tourists. So what that's talking about is you could take the money and then do a campaign of promoting Madison County. I mean, obviously, it also allows you, if you've got down home days, right, that we think will bring in some tourists and bring in folks, you can advertise, that one event. You can't advertise events, though, that don't have their main purpose bringing in tourists, right? So if you had some, I can't think of one like that off the top of my head, but if you looked at an event that really didn't have anything to do with tourists, it was just local folks, you probably couldn't use these monies for that. It just, just makes sense. Number 4, to fund convention bureaus, tourist information centers, news bureaus, etc. 5, to finance beach park facilities or beach channel, estuary, or lagoon improvements, etc. And keep going down. Erosion control, including constructions of beach groins, I don't know what that is, and shoreline protection, enhancement, cleanup, restoration of inland lakes and rivers to which there is public access, as those used relate to the physical preservation of beach, shoreline, channel, etc. So if you wanted to use some of these funds at Cherry Lake, you've got public access there now, you can probably do that.
if you wanted to use it, if you thought that, at rivers, you know, we've got boat ramps, like say at Boundary Bend, those kind of things, we wanted to develop those. Now, we, have in the past, though, been pretty successful at getting FERDAP grants and getting grants from, the Department of, I'm trying to say, Fish and Game, for those kinds of things. So that's, you know, you want to weigh that out, obviously, if you get money somewhere else. And, okay, on D, go on to 6. B, the revenues received pursuant to this section by a county of less than 950,000 in population, so we squeak right under that. May be used for the following purposes. A, to acquire, construct, extend, enlarge, remodel, maintain, operate one or more zoological parks, fishing piers, or nature centers. I don't know if we have any interest in any of that, but that's something you can do. Now, D, the same page. The revenues to be derived from the tourist development tax may be pledged to secure and liquidate revenue bonds issued by the county for the purposes set forth in subparagraphs A, 1, 2, and 5. So let's go back to 1, 2, and 5. 1 on page 5, to acquire, construct, remodel convention centers, auditoriums, etc. 2 is the zoological parks. 5 is finance beach park facilities, and all of that. So what's the point in that I want to make sure everybody knows? You can not only take the money and use it for those purposes, you can borrow money from a lender and pledge those revenues to pay back that. So if you wanted to borrow a bunch of money and do something big, you know, that falls under 1, 2, or 5, you would be able to do that. You'd be authorized to do that legally. Now, the other 2, and this is again, when I say the statute was made by committee, it's kind of gangly because 5A says everything under the section can be used this way. But then if you go back to, let me get there. Go back to 2 of 7, and then subsection L, your 2 pennies, your extra 2 pennies are actually called the sports franchise area tax or something. And it was put in originally for people like Pinellas County was going to bring in a baseball team or something, right? And it was a way for them to finance that. But the statutes have expanded beyond that. And so if you look at L, that sentence, okay, so in addition to the other tax, which is imposed pursuant to this section, the county may impose an additional 1% tax, a majority of the governing boards, in order to, 1, pay the debt service on bonds issued to finance construction, reconstruction, and renovation of a professional sports franchise facility, or the acquisition, construction, reconstruction, renovation of a retained spring training franchise facility, either publicly or operated, or publicly owned or operated by the owner of a professional sports franchise or other lessee with sufficient expertise to operate such facility and to pay planning, cost, design thereof. Now that, obviously that was the, section 1 was what it was originally intended to, and that doesn't affect us much. We don't, you know, we're not going to have a professional sports facility. But then they added, number 2, pay the debt service on bonds issued to finance construction, reconstruction, renovation of a convention center, and to pay the planning and design costs incurred prior to issuance of such bonds. So see, we could use that money, you could levy the money and use it to finance a convention center. Number 3, pay the operation and maintenance costs of a convention center for a period of up to 10 years. Only counties have elected to levy the tax for the purposes authorized in paragraph 2 may use the tax for the purposes of the subparagraph. So the point of that is, if you levy the tax and use it to construct, or reconstruct, or renovate a convention center, then you can then use that 1 penny to run the convention center for up to 10 years, right? And then number 4, promote and advertise tourism in the state of Florida nationally or internationally. And again, that's the same thing we've been doing. So it started out that when I say it was made by committee, you had the one guy originally came up, oh yeah, we need this professional sports facility, and then they've added these other things that now open it up.
Tommy.
Sir.
I'm not trying to get ahead, but
No,
is this an additional 1% to the maximum of 5?
No, this is one of the 2 we haven't yet levied.
The way it was worded, I didn't know if that said
Yeah,
there was a 1 cent
No,
Yeah,
additional.
it sounded like.
Well, and this, what they did here for us, this is DOR or the Joint Legislative somebody, they've come,
Development, demographic and research.
Demographic and Research.
DOR.
And, what they've done is they've put all that together for us.
Okay.
So the way the statute, what it ought to say is, it ought to say,
Part of
you
the five.
can levy, 1 penny to do this, 2 second penny to this, but it's done by committee. And so people come in and they add it, when they add it, they go, oh, well, in addition to those other ones, you can do,
But the maximum is 5.
Fine.
the maximum for Madison County is 5.
Okay.
Now, you know, if you're in Dade County, you got to.
I'm glad he asked that question, 'cause it sounded, when you said, reading that, it sounded like it was an additional pennies that could be done for bond.
So now, those extra 2 pennies are, L that begins on 2 of 7,
Yeah,
and then N that begins on 3 of 7.
right.
And they're pretty similar. So what can you do with N? Pay the debt service, and I'm skipping down to number 1, pay the debt service on bonds issued to finance the construction, reconstruction, renovation of facility, publicly owner operated, and that's a professional sports franchise. B, acquisition, construction, reconstruction, renovation of facility, that are publicly owned or operated, operated professional sports franchise. Number 2, advertise tourism. So this one doesn't have in there that you could do your convention centers with this 1 penny. But remember, we're already using our 3 pennies to advertise tourism, which is what's set out in number 2. So what you could do is you could take one of those pennies we've already, you could levy this, replace one of the pennies you've already got, not take away any money, and pledge one of those pennies if you wanted to do that. So anyway, and of course, those can all be pledged. So that's what I wanted y'all to know, that you have the option of doing. It's not just promotion of tourism. So I think there's 2 things that that y'all might want to consider and decide if you want to consider further. Number 1 is you've got a maximum of 5. You're presently levying 3. Are you interested in levying any more? And then number 2, are you interested in any of these other options with a facility, either a beach or a park facility? Some things that can be, you know, you can actually do more or less capital expenditures.
My way of thinking, I think we need to go for it. Well, but I think you need to, well, according to the statute, you got to have a workshop with TDC and chamber.
Well, the way the statute's set up, everything you do with tourist development money, you take it to TDC first, and you want, because see, the way TDC is set up, that's the local folks that are involved in the community, involved in tourism. You get their thoughts on it.
Right.
Now, the ultimate decision is this board, but the reason you appointed TDC is so that they can evaluate stuff and make recommendations. And they may recommend, no, we want to keep going the way we are, and that's fine, and y'all decide what you want to do, or they may say, hey, we've got a great project, and, you know, we want y'all to look at it. But the one piece I thought, because we went over this kind of when we first did it, but that was, you're talking about 20 years ago? Yeah. And so I figured y'all hadn't, didn't remember all that. But yes, the fact that you can spend it on some capital, that money on capital expenditures, and the fact that you can bond it. So you could do something big and then bond that money and pay it back. The wrinkle, though, is I don't know that you can trust the revenue projections from November 2019 because of all this COVID. I would assume that doesn't hit somewhere like Madison as hard as it would like at St. Augustine because we don't have the tourists, but I mean, that's a guess. I don't know.
Well, I know one of the goals in MCDC over the years is some type of sporting complex, convention center, something like that to draw tourism.
Right.
So I would think that if we look at every funding avenue possible.
You're talking this, if we were elect to go with the extra 2, that would be your money you could bond. So it wouldn't cripple TDC's finances
For tourism.
Yeah. You would be using the additional tax base.
You could certainly do that. I think it is within this board's authority. Y'all could bond all 5 of it. You could bond none of it. I mean, that's what y'all would decide. But yes, I think that's certainly an option. Is you could levy two more pennies. You could bond off 2 pennies and then leave the amount of money that TDC has now untouched, or anything in between.
3 pennies, whatever.
Whatever you want to do.
So it wouldn't cripple TDC.
Yeah, I guess my question is, all right, right now Parks and Recreation takes care of the bike path, right? I'm just wondering, because is that considered to some degree tourist
Just
development?
market it out there as one of our.
I think you probably could.
Well, I see that is one of the things we could shift maybe to there, to help Parks and Recreation, because we're all the time having to clean limbs and do a lot of work on that bike path, and,
Yeah.
but it looks to me like if I read number 5 right, well now, but, that would come under, and I'm wondering, you know, do we need, and I do, some of y'all from Rick would be much more apt to answer the question on this, but do we need to think about possibly looking at upgrading our boat ramps on the river?
Well, I think, from my understanding, TDC would have to bring back a recommendation.
Yeah, but I mean, it's one thing we could be, look at,
If
taking
you
it
on
to
the list.
TDC. What I'm saying is taking it to TDC and say, you know, we would like to, y'all to consider upgrading the boat ramp for us.
I think you wanna give TDC a very broad and say, hey, what do y'all wanna do?
Yeah.
And if any, I mean, they may say, no, we'll go and find out. But the other thing is, get a list of projects and then see where your funding sources are, because like with boat ramps, if there was, FERDAP grants out there for boat ramps, we'll just spend this money.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I just ask Bobby a question. Do you know what the other counties levying, because they utilizing all 5 cents right now around us?
I can tell you, I'm looking at it right now, actually.
Yeah, it's on the sheet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hamilton does 3,
It's 2 to 3.
Lafayette's not doing any, Jefferson's doing 3, Taylor does all 5, Swanee does 3. Pretty much everybody around us looks like they're doing 3.
And actually, this is just the first page, that's the second page.
Looks like it's
We
quite a
talked
few
about-
that doing 5.
There's a lot of the bigger counties
Yeah.
and the ones that have a lot more tourism,
Yeah.
impact.
If they're coastal counties, again, the ones that got coastal versus.
Bobby, you have something you wanted to say?
He just said it. But I do have something I want to say.
Sure.
What's projected at this moment is $130,000 in income for a year. So we have on the budget $210,000, but that's money left over. If we, and I expect we'll be getting more, we've got the RV park now, and now that you say there's Airbnbs, maybe there's more money. But at this moment, there's $130,000, and automatically $48,000 goes to the chamber. That leaves the remaining amount of money for all the different things that TDC does. So I love it that you're thinking big and that you're having ideas, but we have to, I'm going to urge you to be practical, that there's not this huge pot of money to take from.
Well, I know, you keep mentioning convention, and I know, we've done half the Ag Center, and, just so y'all know, FAC sent out a thing, y'all may have seen the email Friday, there was a, IFAS grant listed on there, particularly for renovation of agricultural buildings such as our Ag Center, and I forwarded that to Ed Dean. He's, y'all may be aware, the city and the county are doing a swap on that CBG grant, but also, because it's inside the city limits, we couldn't apply for the CBG. But, I sent Ed that email, and he started working on it Friday night for that, one through IFAS, which is, I think wasn't it kind of through IFAS where we got the first $500,000 when we first did the first renovation of that?
Legislative.
That was
It was legislative, but it was-
appropriation.
Yeah, it was legislative appropriation, but
I don't know where it come from.
I thought it came out of
Department of Ag.
Yeah, Department of Ag. But anyway, they've got a grant in there now, that was on that email Friday, and, let's see, so he's got two possibles to do the work on the Ag Center.
We're just limited with the Ag Center as the facility, that what it can do.
Well, yeah,
You know,
I guess maybe we could try to think about doing other things with it once we get it.
But the place itself limits what you can do.
Yeah, that's true too, yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
But if we could build an open area
Yeah.
at the interstate, it's visible or it's for people coming from different areas, rodeos, horse, those type of facilities are really on the increase now.
The other thing is if you're, don't forget your ag center is owned by the Department of Agriculture.
Right.
If you're gonna put all this money into it, you might want a facility that y'all own.
Well, yeah, and I think, Commissioner Walter's right, something out at the interstate would be, way to think about it.
My thing is, we can do this, if we go this route, and we can do this, and do it where it doesn't cripple TDC, it's not affecting their money, it's above and beyond, so it's a win-win for everyone.
And I think the other thing the statute says is that whatever you do has to be part of your plan. And this board, your plan presently doesn't provide for these kinds of expenditures. So I think the first task, I think, if you wanted to charge TDC with a task, would be to relook at our plan and make recommendations. Hey, this is what we think how the plan ought to be amended, if at all, and bring that back to y'all. And along with some projects that they would be interested in, and y'all, take it from there.
I know, I've been approached by quite a few people that have asked about a, quote, convention center or facility, something that would be a multi-use complex. It could be used for everybody in the county and also promote tourism in district, or influx of tourism.
But let me back up a little bit. Don't you have to make this presentation to TDC?
I think this board needs to instruct TDC. TDC, we'd like you to look at A, B, and C, and then they can look. And I'm happy if y'all want me to appear at TDC.
But I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be, that's where we need to head.
Yeah.
That direction.
So y'all have a meeting Wednesday, y'all can formally instruct,
Okay.
So does this count as your workshop?
This is a workshop,
No.
This was the workshop, he was just presenting everything they could do, they're gonna come back to you guys at the TDC with, hey, we'd like for you guys to look at this, and then present to them.
Yeah.
Right there.
So I guess we have to amend the agenda Wednesday.
Just to give the direction.
Okay.
Yeah, we want TDC to be involved in the future plans. Ultimately, the board makes a decision, but we want TDC to be involved in the planning process.
Yeah, just like the P&Z board.
Sure, absolutely.
Sometimes.
Okay. Any more comments?
Very good presentation.
Thanks, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you also have the next presentation too, on
MSTU.
MSTU and MSTU.
All right.
Just in how the process, more or less.
Sure.
They presented already,
Yeah, okay, when you're breaking down and I think we're talking about this in the context of roads, is that accurate? Okay. And so remember what's happening with the two differences. Now, they're both ways of the county to derive revenue, right? So it's, for lack of a better term, it's the county reaching in and taking revenue from the taxpayers. Now, an MSTU, Municipal Service Taxing Unit, MSBU, Municipal Services Benefit Unit, the difference is, what's the process for receiving the revenue? So with a taxing unit, what you're doing is you're adding ad valorem tax. So right now, we are, and let me back up a little bit. Under Florida law, you've got up to 32 mills that can be levied on a piece of property. So if you got a piece of property, how many mills are on you? If it's over 32, it can't be done. That's 10 for school purposes, 10 for county purposes, 10 for municipal purposes, and 2 for water management purposes, right? Now, you are allowed to levy whatever part of that millage the legislature sees fit to give you the authority to levy. Theoretically, I don't think it's ever been done this way, theoretically, the county could levy school millage, right? If the legislature had a statute saying that, you could do that. I don't think it's ever been done, I don't think it ever will be done. I'm just telling you theoretically what could happen. It's not that only counties can levy county millage, only cities can levy city millage. That's not the way it is. It's what the legislature allows you to levy. So right now, the legislature has allowed you to levy the 10 mills for county purposes, right? So you have the ability to do that. The legislature has also allowed you to levy the millage for municipal purposes in the unincorporated area of the county. So let's say you said, well, the municipality provides X service like like trash pickup, let's say, right? In there, and the county, doesn't provide that countywide, but the municipality provides it in the municipality. You could come in with an MSTU and you could levy that, ad valorem tax, that municipal ad valorem tax in the unincorporated area of the county, provide that same service in the unincorporated area. Does that make sense? So it's a way, so you're not bound by the 10 mills. When we normally think of millage, you think, oh, well, the county's got 10 mills. Well, no, the county can go higher than that with this municipal services taxing unit because you're not levying county millage, you're levying municipal millage, right? So if you want to levy a municipal, if you want to create a municipal services taxing unit, you 5 individuals can direct that that be done. You can levy it on the entire unincorporated area. You can levy it on a particular piece of the unincorporated area. And you can say, and it's more complicated than this. You have to go through hearings and all of that. But the final decision is up to you 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners. And if you say we're going to, in this piece of the county or in all the unincorporated area, we're going to levy an additional mill for X, it's just levy. And it shows up on people's taxes and they just have to pay it. It's not like special assessments. You don't have to get a study, and you don't have to, any of that kind of stuff. It's just, it's on there. Now, why do people not do that? Well, because folks don't like taxes, obviously. I mean, that's, they scream every time y'all talk about raising the mill of taxes. And the other thing that people have always considered is unfair about taxes is the fact that taxes hit businesses harder than residences. If people have very low value homes, they end up paying no taxes, and those are the kind of arguments that you see. So anyway, that's option 1, and that's, like I say, you can do without a study, without anything. That's a policy decision. Now, a municipal services benefits unit is different. So over here you got taxing unit, over here you got benefit unit. Benefit unit is the same thing in the sense that you're reaching into the taxpayers' pockets and you're pulling out money. It's different, though, by the mechanism you use to do that. Benefits unit is non-ad valorem special assessment. And as we talk about taxes, those are ad valorem taxes. That means values. Taxes based on the value of real property. Non-ad valorem special assessments are special assessments that are levied based upon the idea of a benefit that you are conferring to that piece of property. So, piece of property, you are getting a benefit in that somebody that buys you now has fire protection when they otherwise would not have fire protection. That's a benefit we're giving to you, piece of property, and so we're going to levy a non-ad valorem assessment. When you levy that assessment has to pass what's called the dual rational nexus test, which only lawyers can come up with trouble like that, but the dual rational nexus test. That means it's got to be reasonable, it's got to be no more than the value of the service, and it's got to be reasonably apportioned among all of those parcels. Now, you as the Board of County Commissioners are allowed to make those policy decisions as to what is the reasonable apportionment and as to what is the value of the services, and the courts only review those as to whether they are arbitrary. Now, so you have a pretty good amount of flexibility. Now, for it not to be arbitrary, what you have to do is you have to have an expert come in and they do a study and they say, okay, what is the utility of these services? And they say, what is the apportionment and all of that? And that's presented to you and you follow that, and that's not arbitrary. You may be wrong, but it's not arbitrary, right? There's a difference between wrong and arbitrary. 2 + 2 = 5 is wrong. But if I don't know any better and a mathematician tells me 2 + 2 = 5 is right, my decision is not arbitrary. It's based on something, it's based on an expert that's supposed to know what he was doing and all of that. Does that make sense? It may not actually be. What?
I just think it's funny. Go ahead.
Yeah. It may not be that this is reasonably apportioned, but when you base it upon an expert that goes through and shows you it's reasonably apportioned, that's not an arbitrary decision. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So you can do non-ad valorem assessments for many things. More recently, in terms of the law, meaning in the last 50 years, they've expanded non-ad valorem assessments to things like services. That's how this county got into the problems we got into before with, because the county was levying non-ad valorem assessments for fire, for solid waste, for ambulance service, and landfill closure. Now, and those were challenged, went up to, and while all of that was going on, the Florida Supreme Court came in, and they figured out that, that non-ad valorem assessments for land, for solid waste and for EMS do confer a special benefit on real property, and therefore those are permissible. And they decided that, for fire and solid waste are permissible, and they decided that EMS and landfill closure were not. And I can't really tell you the good reason why they figured that, but anyway, that's what they figured, and that's what we're all bound by. And so that's why we levy those two services and not others. Right? Now, more traditionally with special assessments are capital improvements such as roads. So traditionally, special assessments, what would happen is you have a road or an area, and you wanted to improve the roads in that area. And so what you do is you would still have someone come in with a study, and they would say, okay, for these folks in this area, if we go and pave the roads and bring them up to standards and all of this, that's going to specially benefit all of the folks in this area, and they figure out a formula and all of that. And then the county would have the ability to simply go in, do the work, levy the special assessments, and folks had to pay for it, and they didn't get to vote on it. It was like ad valorem taxes in the sense that they're required to pay it, and they don't get the choice of saying, no, I don't want to pay it. It's like it in that sense, but the mechanism is different. So now let's apply that to your issues with the subdivisions. So if you take, number one, as we've talked about before, if y'all are going to go start doing work on roads, number one, you got to have title to the roads, or you got to have an agreement that you're going to. So that's number one before you worry about where's the money going to come from. Once you get the authority to do that, you could then take do an MSTU, and you could draw a box around that subdivision and say, okay, guys, y'all now have 2 more mills of ad valorem tax, or whatever the amount of millage is, right? And so that's just going to be tax, and you're just going to pay it, and that's that, and, and here we go. The other option would be to do the same thing, draw that same box, but then do an MSBU, and then you'd have non-ad valorem special assessments that are reasonably apportioned among all of those lot owners. The advantage on the non-ad valorem assessments is that they will reach folks whose homes are under the exemption caps for ad valorem assessment, and everyone will pay some. That's what you'll hear on that argument. The ad valorem tax may be better in the sense that it hits people who don't have homes, right? Because so if you had a vacant lot and it's in a subdivision, you're not getting greenbelt, where you're going to feel the brunt of that 2 mills probably more than the homeowner. Those are policy decisions that you 5 Board of County Commissioners figure out what you like about. But those are the 2 tools. One's a screwdriver and one's a hammer. They're just 2 tools, and we can apply those however y'all want us to apply them. But anyway, when we're talking about the roads, there's 2 things. Number one is you got to get permission. You either got to get title or you got to get an agreement. And it's not always plain, and just from reading those documents easily, who has the authority to give you either title to the roads or permission on the roads. In modern subdivisions, generally, what they do is they have a surveyor come in, they survey out a road, title to that road is vested in the homeowner association, usually. And that homeowner association can convey title to the roads or can give you the authority to come in and do stuff on the roads. In old subdivisions, what they would do is they would draw out the lot to the center of the road. So everybody's lot includes the center, a piece of it is the center of that road. And then everyone bought a lot with an easement on everybody else's lot, and everybody else bought an easement on mine. Does that make sense? So in that case, you may not have any good way to get title to those roads. You may not have any good way to get permission for y'all to go on those roads. And remember, the county's a big target. If my neighbor goes in there and with his tractor and fixes the road and does a really bad job, I'm probably not going to do anything because we're 2 regular people and we'd sue each other and these lawyers cost money and yada yada. If the county does it, we're a big target and you can get sued, and so you gotta really be careful of that. You need to have the title of the property searched and be comfortable so you can do it. Anyway, So that's number one, getting permission. Number two, when you actually go to levy assessments, usually what we had talked about in the past was the board had made the policy decision that if we got the roads and the subdivisions up to county standards, then the county would take them over. And the thought was, well, gosh, these folks are paying gas tax like everybody else. That covers the maintenance of the roads. If we get the roads up to the right level of service, there's no reason those folks' gas tax money can't pay for their roads like everybody else. But it didn't seem fair for the county to use gas tax money to bring their roads up to a level of service when they had bought their property on the dirt. Well, they knew it was a private road when they bought the property. That was the thought. That doesn't have to be y'all's thought, but that was the thought at the time. And so the thought was, well, let's do the special assessments to bring it up to level of service, and then once it's brought up to level of service, the gas tax, they would just be county roads after that, and gas tax would be used to repair them. When we've only, to my memory, we've only seriously tried that, I think, with David Catton's subdivision, which, I can't call the name of it.
Fine
Ridge. We've only seriously tried that with his because Catton, as the developer, had retained title to the roads, and that was verifiable. I don't know who's got it now that he's passed. And he was thrilled to give us title to the road, was thrilled to. So what we did was we went out and, I think this was in the time of, when we were re-upping special assessments anyway, and got somebody to look at it and do a thumbnail sketch of, okay, so if we did all this and brought it up to standards, lot owners, what would your assessment be? And the thought was you'd borrow the money and then pay it back over time with these special assessments. So you're talking about assessments being on there for, 20 and 30 years. And they were not interested in doing it. Now, if you'd gotten title to the roads, could you have forced it? Sure. But the board wasn't. The reason you want to do that anyway is your constituents are coming up complaining the roads are bad. So you don't want to switch that complaint for, another one if you don't have it. Anyway, I know that's a lot of stuff.
I do have a question,
Yeah.
and I don't want to usurp y'all if y'all. I was pointing out to them in Fund 20, which is our transportation fund. Again?
There's a page.
What page is that on?
Yeah.
Fund 20. It's going to be after wherever Lee was
City of
earlier.
Lee.
Page 16. There's a revenue line item for the transportation fund that is grading services for the town of Lee. So we have a contract apparently with the town of Lee that we charge them $1,000 a year and we grade some roads for them. Is that an avenue that they could do even on the private roads and with those homeowners associations individually?
Yes.
Instead of doing, it's essentially the same thing, they just have a contract and not have to take the road over.
You can certainly do that. The limitation is you spending public money on private roads. So let's say you had an agreement where they paid you the fair value of the county services and the county went in and did the work. Yeah, I think y'all can certainly do that. I think the issue though, and again, it's a policy issue for y'all to decide if they're taking money and paying us the fair value of our work to go do those. It seems like they ought to be able to take that money into the private sector and find somebody to
And I think part of the argument that I have received from, namely, not Pine Ridge Ranch, but,
Blue
Ridge Landing, is they've tried to contract with private. Lonnie even went out and tried to find, because we didn't want to get into entrepreneurship with, competing against the business people out there making a living doing it. But they couldn't get even, that I can remember, Billy may have someone give them a quote. It wasn't like they were exorbitantly high and they were coming to the county to want
Nobody would come look at
to
it.
find out. So what I'd asked was, well, Lonnie, can you give us a cost per hour based on the mileage to go in there and do a as needed, okay, we need a road work done, it's gonna cost $5,000. Then that organization or that subdivision pays that money, we go in there and we do the work, and then we don't do any more again until they request, hey, we need a road done, it's gonna be $5,000. They pay it, we go and do it. And then we got into the discussions where the MSDU, MS, or TU and BUs and all that.
I would assume, and this is an assumption, I would assume that there's one of two reasons that a private contractor doesn't want to go into the road, into private subdivision. Number one is they're scared they're not going to get paid, right? Because you've got a homeowner association, the homeowner association doesn't have any money necessarily. What if they just don't pay, right? And then number two, the roads may be in such a bad shape that it's so big of a project, they're scared that, it's going to overwhelm. I think one of the things that y'all could do, if you, again, a policy decision, this board makes, if you wanted to, you could say, okay, subdivision, it's going to cost Bill Steves X number of dollars to go in and do you a plan to figure out what this road needs to be done. Go ahead and pay us that and we'll get it money, right? And he goes in and he does the plan. Now you got something you can bid out. And then, if you all wanted to say, look, the cost of this is going to be X subdivision, pay us that money, and then we'll bid it out and we'll intervene, and be the one that the contractor works with. You could do it that way. I have a hard, if they have the money and really can't pay it, it seems unlikely to me that they really can't find somebody. Now, I'm not saying that's the way it is, but I've not seen that. I've not seen that you couldn't find somebody to grade roads.
Didn't Lonnie didn't he come up with a figure? Right.
He did, he got like so many passes with so much, he can't get
The issue is they are having trouble collecting their fees from their from their homeowners, that they couldn't come up with money.
Right.
I think was.
Well, then why, because then the argument was, well, just assess us and then we'll.
And some of that is they would rather us be the tax collector than them be the tax collector.
Billing that.
And those can get thorny, when you go to try to assess, you're trying to levy those special assessment liens and, not special assessment, the homeowner assessment liens and all that to compel people to pay money. Now your neighbors are mad at you, I don't know. And some of these subdivisions are older and don't just explicitly say that they can levy homeowner association.
So a lot of them are defunct or not, not even existent anymore.
They're on paper only.
They are, because the business model for that, for a homeowner association, it works wonderfully in Palm Beach County, where everybody's got $1 million house and a few $1,000s a month as a homeowner association fee doesn't seem like all that much, and that generates money, and now you got money to have staff. It works beautifully there. Where you got houses that aren't all that expensive, that fee can be onerous, and then they don't want to collect it, and if you don't collect it for a few years, now your roads have gone down, and it just doesn't work right.
I got a question for you. Go off road for just a minute. Is any of this possible, and it may be too big of a task, but, we were talking the other day about the ISO ratings with the fire department. Does any of this play into that as far as?
More than possible. You've got a fire special assessment right now.
I know. That's what I know, but
you could certainly
say we would add to that, or what would?
Your fire special assessment is to provide fire protection services, and you've gotten a study, and that study is telling you to provide this level of service, you would levy it at these rates. If y'all would like to, you could either wait till the end of our 5 or 6 year period. When is that?
2022.
2022. You could wait to that end, or you could do it right now if you wanted to. And you could get a new study, and that new study would say, okay, for this level of service, plus doing A, B, and C that ups our ISO rating, we want to generate this amount of money. That's going to result in a non-ad valorem assessment of this amount higher. Y'all can certainly do that. And the advantage when you're focusing that money on ISO rating related matters, the advantage is then you can go to the homeowner and say, look, because you're paying this assessment, your property tax is now lower, right? Because the ISO rate has dropped, and that's what affects your property, your fire insurance. But y'all already have that too.
Okay. Well, I guess countywide, we've got a real quandary right now, problem in that there's all the insurance adjusters are yelling at cars, the insurance agents are screaming, hey, our ISO ratings are out the roof.
Yes.
We got
and again, a policy decision for you five gentlemen.
Yeah,
So
sure.
if y'all decide that you're, that is something you want to do, that fire assessment can be increased for that purpose.
Well, as a countywide thing, I would think that's something we gotta look at, and I certainly am, understanding of homeowner association on the roads, but it looks like we've got a bigger problem right now facing us with the ISO.
Well, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I mean,
No, I don't know there too, but I guess if you're gonna prioritize, what is something that needs to be done countywide versus a specific box over here, like you said, box up.
Yeah, and remember now, your fire assessment is effective in the town of Lee and town of Greenville, so it's not just the unincorporated area.
Right.
It's everywhere but the city of Madison, so,
Yeah.
You could, but yes, that's absolutely appropriate to use those funds for, but you would have to, adjust your study to include that kind of stuff. And you might wanna see what your neighboring counties are, what are their fire assessments, I believe everybody has a fire assessment. I know Taylor does, I'm pretty sure Swanee does, pretty sure Hamilton does, pretty sure Jefferson does. Might wanna see what those are to see, if you did raise it to be about what theirs is, would that generate the kind of money you need? But we're sitting here in 2020, and then we're gonna need to do this for 2022. So next year, you're gonna be looking at that, starting that process. So I don't know that it's worth doing it outside of your normal cycle.
So I guess we need to, whether we just move forward with continued discussions on whether we actually look at MSTUs or BUs, or enter into individual contracts for subdivisions on a case-by-case basis. If I understand, if I remember right, we had even talked about doing them on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah,
At the request, but we need to have that request from that subdivision in order for us to move forward.
And we need to be sure as to who owns the roads that the right person's giving us permission.
But if we do it on a contract basis, we wouldn't necessarily have to do that though, right?
Well, yeah, the county can't go do something on my property without me agreeing. That's the question, is who owns the road?
Okay.
Is this also a situation where it has to be a prepaid before we start, or our county equipment can go on private property?
Again, and I hate to be telling you this, but that's a policy decision of this board, unless you have to have good fiscal management. And so if you're contracting with an entity that is telling you they don't have the money to go do it otherwise, I think it would probably be prudent to make them pay up front.
Yeah.
And two, I will have some subdivisions that are gonna say, well, we don't wanna pay anything at all, we're in the county and we pay our fuel taxes and we think we should come in and maintain our roads. That's always gonna be some cases as well.
I think we've covered that, if they bring the roads up to a standard, because it is taking years to.
I do believe though that our standard we had today is unreachable. You can tell them it's gonna pay it.
And again, another policy decision. If y'all want to, what we had done before was we said it had to be paved, and maybe that's not reasonable. Maybe what we want is a good, high-quality dirt road. They bring it up to that.
Well, it used to be that way.
Yeah.
I came on the board, it just changed over to be, because when our subdivision regulations changed, requiring new subdivisions to be paved, then that becomes a policy.
That's right. And
for all existing subdivisions.
And, remember, those regulations are all a creature of their time, because what was going on at that time when we were looking at that, real estate was flying high. We were getting a lot of folks coming in here and breaking up farmland, and they were making money and flipping it. And so it made good sense to say, okay, well, if you're making lots of money, go ahead and pave that. Now, it may not make sense today.
And I think that's also crippling us now, because as much as I keep hearing in MCDC and other areas that our current housing, we're not meeting the housing needs for the future. A lot of these subdivisions are not being done because of the expense of creating them for paved roads. So I think that may be hurting us for future development as well.
Another thing that we need to be aware of, and I don't know how many of y'all are aware, but right now, I've talked to 3 different real estate agents. Real estate is flying.
Yeah,
They're
it's
selling,
moving. It's moving.
it's moving like hotcakes. I mean, Jessica Webb had one the other, she listed one online backing out of the driveway and had it sold before she got out of the driveway. Well, that's how fast it's moving. And some of them are saying, I don't have any inventory. They don't have any inventory, so things are really crazy out there right now. And we are gonna be in a need of we don't have the necessary housing, we don't have the necessary, and roadway too, infrastructure. So I think it's something we got several things that I don't think we are really totally aware of need to be looked at.
I mean, thank you for that,
Yes, sir.
tourism, the bed tax, explanation.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that helped us.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, moving up to animal control. Jamie, you're up, sir.
Pages, it's on pages 5 and 6.
On page 5 and 6.
Chairman,
Okay, man.
Be
Starts
patient.
with 01020.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if y'all don't need me, I think I'll go on if that's okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Jamie, I'm gonna walk out, I gotta go tell her.
01020. Page 5. Everybody's there?
Is that 1020, does that cover, both animal control and mosquito control?
1020 is mosquito control, and then 1021 is animal.
Okay, all right, gotcha, thank you.
Everybody there? I got it. All right, Mr. James.
All right. So everything's pretty much in line with how it is year to year. There is one change in both departments that I would like to make with you guys' approval. We were approached by a uniform company, and I think Solid Waste is getting uniforms from them. We're kind of piggybacking off of their contract. And what I'd like to do is, and this would mostly affect animal control, as far as a few increases in the line item, but if possible, I'd like to use that service and split it between the two departments to bring the cost down a bit. So you'll see a little increase in operating supplies for mosquito control, which I was going to use to split for the uniform service.
It's actually showing on mine a reduction.
Is a reduction, okay, because I've,
2,000 to 1,000.
okay, I should have 2,000 in there, is what mine says.
Line item 5,200.
Yes, sir. Yep. But everything else is about the same as usual. It's a match grant, so we're gonna get 34,000 and some change from the state this year. So the county will match that, and usually the county puts in a little extra just to cover insurance and salaries and all that kind of stuff. But total budget I'm asking for is 72,829.41.
So that may have been changed on the animal control side, under 5,200, because it went up 1,500.
3,500 to 5,000.
So that 1,000
Yeah,
that
that's
you're
right.
talking about may have been adjusted as there.
Okay. And mosquito control is a little more flexible because I do have some in my chemical fund that I can push and pull a little bit with. So, it's not as, I have a little more leeway with it. But, that was the only change I had in that one.
I noticed your part-time salaries went dropped in half.
Yes. I'm thinking clerical error on my part last year. I told you guys at 12,480 because you commented it had gone up. And so what I did is that was my draft that I sent to the state. Well, I reduced that, but for some reason it didn't get changed on the budget this year. So what I did is I just basically cut it in half, and I didn't use all of that money on
David's salary, so whatever I have left over, I'll apply to this year. Because his hours vary, when we're spraying, he works a little more, and then when we're in the off-season, he works a little less, so it's hard to pinpoint an exact amount that I need to pay him, because sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But he averages about 25 hours a week, so it's, whatever I put in there this year, 6,240. If I run shy, I'll use the leftovers from this to boost that up. That makes sense.
Does he have a reserve?
No, that money is in Fund 10.
Right.
So
Okay,
they're
it goes back
individual
in the general fund, so.
Any more questions? Daddy, looking good, man. You got good work?
Trying to keep it,
Yeah.
you know, as
Keep it.
being impossible, but still be able to do the job. So mosquito control is always a gamble, because we never know what we're getting from the state from year to year. But this year we're pretty good. Oh, and another thing I want to mention: don't forget we still have $15,000 to spend on a community cleanup grant, and that has to be used before December. So any projects you guys can think of, we can use it for a lot of stuff, supplies. We can use it for manpower, all that kind of stuff.
Can that be used as a, and this is just thinking, as a, tire disposal?
That's right.
We got a ton, I mean, I'm kind of involved in that.
That's
but-
the only thing they said, can't use it.
Yeah, because, you know,
That
every
makes
now and
sense.
then,
Yeah.
you know, solid waste would put on a program
Yeah.
where they would collect those tires and it helped reduce standard water and
Yes, sir, yeah.
everything else.
And there are funds out there for a tire amnesty week, through the DEP, and that's why they don't want to use these funds for that, because there's
Okay.
already
I was thinking,
funds out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where my mind went first, was let's collect all the tires, but they said no. But this is for just like a general, you know, like if there's places in the county that are overgrown that are producing mosquitoes, or there's drainage efforts that need to be done to reduce mosquito population, those kinds of things. But more so in the environment where there's a lot of people, like community type stuff. I was even thinking when you had mentioned, I guess it's about April this year, about the river cleanup, you know, we may be able to apply it to something like that.
would we be able to use it for roadside cleanup?
Yes, we could. But that's $15,000 that we've got that we have to use.
Yeah, we don't need to send it,
I don't want to send anything back. Just a heads up, think about it, get with Sherilyn, we can get with some projects.
You said it has to be used before December.
Yes, sir.
Most of our roadside cleanups been through volunteer basis or organizations and stuff. I don't know how we could.
Even the river cleanup, it could just be from a media blitz.
Yeah. I know there's a few swimming pools that we've talked about backfilling, you know, to eliminate mosquitoes, from growing them. That's something that was heavily talked about. Things like that, you know, something that would directly impact, mosquito production.
You could go to private property and,
Yes.
and then there's roads to backfill.
Can we go buy some of those 750 million mosquitoes down from Monroe County and bring them up here that don't breed or whatever, or breed out the
Biologically or engineered, yeah.
I've been reading lately, and I know you keep up on all this different research and stuff. Is there anything to this new technology that's supposed to be out there for mosquito eradication?
You're talking about the genetically engineered?
Either that or the infrared, the new types of.
They basically, what the new thing is now, they're irradiating mosquitoes, basically sterilizing them. And it's kind of new, but they're doing some tests down in the Keys, and it's looking pretty successful. But a lot of people are scared of that, and it actually is nothing really to be scared of. They're just eliminating the reproductive cycle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what you do with biological, or not biological control, but BTI, is basically you put that larvicide in there, they eat it, they can't reproduce. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. You're just introducing the full-grown mosquitoes into the environment. I mean, it's promising. I'm sure it would cost a lot of money to get something like that going here, but down there, you know, they got money to mess around with.
Well, I think it just recently started down there in the Keys, I believe.
Yep. I think it was earlier last year, I think.
Yeah.
When I go to my mosquito class this year, they should talk about that. They were just starting that program up. But sounds pretty promising. Anything that keeps chemicals, you know, out of the air and out of the water and all that, I'm all for it. You know, but it's got to be effective too, and it's got to be cost effective. So, you know, we'll see. But yeah, new technology's coming out. One guy had invented a thing you drop in the water and it emits like a sonar pulse, and it's supposed to kill mosquitoes that way. And that looks pretty promising too, but it's expensive. You know, it's mostly for like wastewater treatment plants and stuff with big tanks. They stick that down in there and it sends out a pulse that actually, you know, kills the larvae. It just looked pretty promising on it. I was like, why couldn't I have thought of that? But you know, just one step behind. $1 million idea. But it was a father and a son that came up with that in their garage. Now it's like one of the industry standards. So, pretty cool stuff.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jamie.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, what you guys do.
I appreciate y'all. Keep us working. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll do our best for you guys. Thank you. I'm always available if you need me.
Thanks, sir. Yes, I'll present from Miss Betty's unless y'all want to wait a few minutes and see if she ends up showing up. Because she says she had an appointment, she may or may not make it. So she had emailed me the other day. If you turn to page 7, about maybe a third of the way down, you're going to see a huge expenditure, about $658,000. That's their budget request. And what she emailed me the other day, she said that this budget request was prepared in June. And the budget, as it's presented, with that $658,755, includes a 1% longevity increase. So they're looking at 1% for their employees, the same as the board is looking for our employees here. And a 50-cent raise for library staff. So their staff is paid hourly, and I'm going to venture to say they're probably paid minimum wage. And this is trying to bump them up a little bit. She said this is consistent with Suwannee and Hamilton County library employee pay increases. So they're asking the same thing across the board from other libraries. She said the other areas of projected increase were based on the assumption that the library would be back to normal operations this coming year. She said if they are not back to normal operations, then these things would be reduced. The one place they could reduce is books and publication expense. So she said to Katrina and I, like a line item, and I didn't provide this to you guys, but it's like a line item where they're going to spend their money. Their books and publications that she is talking about went from $30,000 in the present year to $65,000 next year as their ask. That's one place where she said they could reduce because, of course, they won't be buying books. The place, though, where she said they may need to up it, though, would be up in their communications. But she put a small increase there, but she'd be asking for a little bit bigger increase just to make sure that they can provide virtual services, software, books, things like that. I'm not sure what all you can get at the library. I can't remember the last time I've been in a public library, but I know people use it. So what we could do at y'all's direction, even tomorrow, I can talk to her and see how much of this can be reduced and shifted. You know what I'm saying? But she said there is room to reduce her request from the 655. I think that's what I keep saying. 658, there is room to reduce that. But there is, of course, some increase because she is asking for salary increases to match what's going on with the counties around us. So if she shows up, I'll let her talk more about it. I do got a couple things that I didn't mention earlier that I want to mention as I've been sitting here thinking about it. On that 140, on the
145,
yeah,
331.
One thing that's not included at all anywhere in that budget that we gave you is the money coming from the power line. All right, so there's $287,000 coming in. We can show that. I mean, if it comes in tomorrow, of course, it'll have to go in the budget today. And what we would do is we could pull some of that money forward to balance this. All right, we just show it as a pull from the reserves to balance. If it comes in after October 1, it'll go in here as revenue, and then the rest of it would just go to the reserves. So either way, I mean, I could pull that if that's what you want to do. Another thing, and I failed to mention, and I apologize for this, when you look at the things on the Fund 10 revenue side, with the exception of ad valorem tax, these things are budgeted at 95% of what we're being told they will be, right? So we already build in a little bit of this doesn't come in. So, and Austin mentioned it before they left, the land is selling like crazy, right? I mean, I get it all the time. I've had real estate agents try to get me to list my house and my property, and I'm like, I don't plan on moving, you know what I mean? But they're like, I can sell it like that, you know what I mean? So it is going. There is a chance, like, we could look at some of these things. I could talk to Rick about building permits, about is that trend going up, and is it going to maintain that level? So there's some revenue that may be gained there. Again, we budget 95% of what he tells us, right? So,
Is it kind of like land swapping going on, or is it actually buying to rebuild and, or building new properties and that?
At least anecdotally, now this is, you hear real estate agents, they're always fairly positive. People are moving here. They're tired of South Florida. I hear it all the time. This is what South Florida was like when I grew up. It's Madison. And so.
Well, I can see it out there.
I mean, you go to lunch one day and just try to sit there and really think about all the people in there that you know.
Yeah.
And some people, you have no idea who they are or where they come from.
Yeah, you can ride in the rural areas, wooded
Take
areas.
255 and ride to the county line.
Yeah,
see the new
exactly.
houses being built.
So there's 95% of that. On the ad valorem tax, we do 95.7%. Right? So, we upped that 1 year before. I don't really like upping those percentages. That's, just kind of like to be a little more cautious. The other place too, and this is going to be a question for Commissioner Moore probably, on page 2, our Osceola area solid waste admin payment, that's our rebate money that we get every year.
We should be getting that again.
We budgeted at $70,000. So far, we got $140,000 this year. But since I've been here, I'm going to say that generally is about $95,000. But we don't know what to budget there. So if you got some number you can give us to project, we'll put a number in there.
All right, I'll try and work on that today, but normally it's based on the amount of tonnage that we carry to the landfill.
Right, and I don't know if that's going up or down with people ordering more things from, I don't know about y'all, but it seems like every time I turn around, there's some package coming to my house now, because that's just how people shop, you know what I mean? I don't know, we try to sell that cardboard in the cardboard box, but everybody's doing that. And the only other thing I wanted to mention about TDC, if you do levy the 5 pennies, that still only comes out about $250,000. Tommy never said that, but if you go to the bank and you're going to pledge every cent that goes to TDC, that's $250,000. I don't know how much they're going to loan you and how long that payment's going to be out there. But if you're going to build a facility, you may be looking at $3 or $4 million. And he said, hey, you can use 10 years to run that. Well, that's putting every penny going toward that construction. So there may not be money, and that's y'all's decision. I just wanted to point it out. Do what you want to do. And I talked to Bobby out there and made her understand that whatever y'all do, it's going to be with TDC's input. So. I don't have anything else. I hope it all went well today. And
Yeah. And getting back to that TDC thing, I think if they give us a list, and we could just go through that list and see what might be a comfortable thing to do.
All right. As far as the presentation, is there anything else that y'all would want to know more about? I don't mind. I don't know. I can put it together for tomorrow morning, but I don't mind doing it at a board meeting sometime. If you have questions about how does X work in the budget, I don't mind trying to make a presentation to help out and get some understanding. I also don't mind if y'all come to my office and try to get a little understanding that way too.
I think the presentations from you and Tommy both have been very enlightening, very enlightening.
Yeah, I'm glad he came, because that was, like I said, I've learned a ton about TDC here lately because I've been forced to, but it's interesting. So I say all that to say, I think that there's a way to close at 1:45. I had forgotten all about the power line, forgot to mention it, and Katrina and I were talking across the table here about it. So.
Well, and it's not a significant amount, but something else to think about is that list of land.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be a whole lot of money, but
No, but it's something we hadn't factored in.
What's that?
the money from the list of lands when we start doing our land sales.
Yeah.
All right, I don't have anything else, sir.
Anybody else have anything else?
I was just gonna ask about this ethics training thing. I guess it'd be more prudent to do that probably through fact online this year.
Yes, I have not, typically before now, I've usually heard from the League of Cities, because they've typically done that in September. But I haven't seen anything so far
Seems like
yet.
I heard Mayor Bell mention a couple meetings ago about the League of Cities doing something, but it's just as easy for me to do this in a virtual setting
Right.
than go somewhere and sit and travel for, like one time we drove all the way out to, 100 miles to go to, for a half a day,
I've also tried to talk to, this is me and Rick conversation probably, but I've also tried to talk to John Grosskopf about hosting one for all the service counties, the college services at the college, like in the auditorium. And what that does is it allows that college to also bring in people from the surrounding counties to utilize that service to go, oh, you know what, NFC's different than I remember, because, some of these people probably haven't been there since 1970 when they went to school there.
We know a few years ago, we did have one here in Madison County.
Last year we had one at the city.
Yeah, I have hosted it at our new training, when it was new training center back several years ago.
I think that would be a good idea, especially as far as the college relationship with the city and with the county here locally to help rebuild some potentially hard feelings. So.
Good idea. Anybody have anything else?
Just want to thank Bill and.
8:30 in the morning.
Thank y'all.
Yeah. Hard work went on and it shows. All right, we adjourn to adjourn.